13 sat cross-legged while leaning against Giga's soft underbelly. Several hours had passed since he discovered the location of the Shard of Origin, and he had been busy devising a strategy on how to secure it safely. While this was happening, Erica was sparring against the troll shamans, while Sherry and her blade panther, Mars, was sparring against one of the troll raiders. This troll raider was T6, and he was a rank 4 alpha monster. T1, their group's leader, was a rank 5 sovereign. Even now, Erica and Sherry still couldn't believe that Zion commanded a monster army that could potentially tip the balance of the war in their favor. However, the teenage boy told them that they shouldn't rely on the monsters who were friendly with him. He made sure that the two girls and Ratatoska completely understood that the existence of Giga, Blackie, Rocky, Hercules, and the other monsters must remain a secret to other people. The White Rat Man, Ratatoska, was currently being trained by O1, who was a rank 5 sovereign. After drinking the Red Dragon's blood, the hero of the Ratmen mutated into a rank 4 alpha monster. But, even with his current rank, and even if he was a hero, it was still impossible for Ratatoska to face off against the rank 8 Goblin Emperor. Had he not been picked up by 13, he would have faced countless life-and-death battles spanning through a few years, allowing him to gain enough fighting experience and raise his rank to a higher level before facing off against the mortal enemy of his race. Since the hero was still not ready to face the Goblin Emperor, 13 had no intention of letting Ratatoska fight the boss monster. I guess I have no choice but to use that method, 13 thought. But it will take time to prepare. The teenage boy was certain that the Goblin Emperor wouldn't fall for a distraction. Even if he were to raise half of the Goblin City, he believed that the leader of the goblins would still not budge from his throne and leave the Shard of Origin behind. Drastic times call for drastic measures, 13 mused before shifting his gaze at the White Rat Man, who was having a hard time defending against his sparring partner. Tiona, who was coiled up on 13's neck, nudged his cheek, which made the teenage boy smile faintly. If an opportunity presents itself, why not? 13 assured his companion. Just make sure to not do anything reckless. The Black Snake nodded in understanding. Meanwhile, somewhere in the territory of the Lizard Men, Drazit clenched his teeth as he faced off against 2 rank 5 alpha ratmen who had pushed him to a corner. I'm going to kick you on the chest, so make sure to pretend like you're really hurt. Okay, the Ratman said in a volume that only Drazit could hear. Drazit roared, which was a sign that he would cooperate. Without another word, the Ratman unleashed a powerful kick on the Lizardman's chest, which sent him flying backward for several meters. The Goblin Shamans, who were monitoring the battle, nodded their heads in satisfaction after seeing that the Lizardmen were slowly getting pushed back by the Ratmen. The only thing that they were dissatisfied with was that no Lizardmen or Ratmen had died in this particular skirmish. Both sides were fighting intensely, but every time one of them got seriously injured, they would either retreat or one of their comrades would carry them away from the battlefield. After an hour of intense fighting, both sides retreated to nurse their injuries. "You stupid rats!" the Goblin Shaman shouted in anger. "It has been several days, and you've only managed to push them back for a mile. What kind of madness is this?" "Sir, as you can see, they are using a hit-and-run strategy against us," the Ratman commander, who goes by the name Zek, replied. "If we are not careful, what happened yesterday might happen again." The Goblin frowned after hearing the Ratman commander's reply. Yesterday, 2 of the Goblin Shamans who were accompanying the main army of the Ratmen died due to an assassination attempt by the Lizardmen. Because of this, their camp was left with only 2 Goblin Shamans overseeing the front lines of the battlefield. "If we move recklessly, there is a possibility that something might happen to you and your comrade, sir. We can't risk it," Zek stated. "If both of you were to die, the Goblin Emperor might get angry and hold us responsible." The Goblin Shaman clicked his tongue. "Fine, but make sure to kill as many of those lizards as you can next time." The Goblin Shaman stormed off in anger, but he didn't go back to his quarters. He went to the makeshift infirmary of the Ratmen to check the injuries of the warriors. Although there were no deaths, almost all the warriors were seriously injured and needed several days before they could fight again on the front lines. The Goblin Shaman clicked his tongue in annoyance because it would have been better if the Ratmen had just died instead of wasting their time recuperating. Although the current state of the war seemed to move in a crawl, they were still able to make some gains, so the goblins still reported it to their emperor. But after they mentioned that 2 of their comrades had died during a sneak attack by the lizard men, the goblin emperor told them that there were some unusual movements that were happening in their territory. After the shamans had heard that several goblin camps had been destroyed by unknown assailants, who were believed to be lizard men warriors, the goblin shamans became anxious. They knew that the rat men army in the Pangea swamp had been annihilated down to the last rat, and it had opened a breach in the rat men army's defenses. But instead of being pincered from the front and the back, the lizard men only employed guerrilla warfare, which led the shamans to believe that the lizard men, who were now attacking their home turf, came from the Varesti tribe. Of course, this was far from the truth. Drazit had managed to capture one of the rat men scouts that were patrolling the area and passed his message to them. The rat man scout then reported to Zek, and the rat men commander went to meet with Drazit in secret. The 2 commanders then started to strategize a plan on how they could delay the war and minimize the casualties on both sides. Because of this, both armies only fought with the intention to seriously injure their opponent but not kill them. This was the only way they could think of to make it seem like they were fighting seriously while keeping the casualties as low as possible. It was a delicate balance that they had been maintaining for the past few weeks. So when Zek overheard about the current situation of the goblins in their territories, he immediately asked his scout to go to the location where he could secretly pass a message to the lizard men. This was one of the methods that they used to communicate with each other, allowing them to share information. When Drazit received Zek's message, he was overjoyed because Zion had kept his word. He immediately shared this news with the other great chieftains of the lizard men, which raised a bit of their morale. With this, we will be able to buy more time, Drazit said with confidence. We just need to hold on for a bit longer until Zion can steal the Shard of Origin. After that, we can finally end the war. How could it be that easy? The great chieftain of the Moreno tribe, Vasjo, asked. He is facing off against a rank 8 sovereign. Can that child really do what he promised to do? Whether he can or whether he can't, we can only wait, a great chieftain commented. Frankly, I don't think the boy is capable of facing off against a goblin emperor. Destroying a few goblin camps is already a feat worth being proud of. But I just don't see him winning against the emperor. He doesn't need to win against the goblin emperor, Drazit stated. His goal is to only steal the Shard of Origin. If we are lucky, then this war will end in a week or 2. A profound silence descended upon the underground cavern where the great chieftains were having a meeting. And what if it doesn't end in a week or 2? Vasjo broke the silence. What if he fails? He won't fail, Drazit replied. Where is this confidence of yours coming from? One of the great chieftains asked. As much as I want to end this war, there is no guarantee that this human boy who goes by the name Zion will succeed. He is right, another great chieftain commented. How about we set a deadline? 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, and this war is still ongoing, we need to come up with a strategy to either migrate to a different location or continue fighting. Now that we know the reason behind this war, we can't afford to lose our warriors. Otherwise, anything we do will be meaningless, Vasjo stated. Even if we win against the rat men, the goblins will just finish what they started. By then, we would no longer have enough fighting force to defend ourselves. One mistake, and we can lose everything. But there is a way to prevent our people from annihilation. We can always retreat to the scattered islands far into the sea. Our people have lived in those islands for generations, and it is the haven that has kept our race safe from harm. If the rat men are to pursue us there, we can just sink their ships before they can even reach our islands. Drazit knew that the other great chieftains were only thinking of the survival of their people, so he didn't oppose their suggestion. Very well. Drazit nodded. 2 weeks. If after 2 weeks, we still haven't heard any news from Zion, then let us all migrate away from our current territories. All the great chieftains nodded in agreement and concluded their meeting. Drazit sighed internally, but there was nothing else he could do. Zion, I hope you know what you are doing, Drazit muttered as he looked at the east, where the territories of the goblins were located. Because if you don't, we will have no choice but to leave you and the other humans to fend for yourselves. The Lizardman commander shook his head helplessly before heading to his camp to talk to David. Since he was the current leader of the humans who were fighting this war alongside them, he needed to know the decisions of the great chieftain so that he and the rest of the humans could create a plan that would also ensure their survival. This mission is very dangerous, 13 said. So make sure to stay as close to Rocky as possible. That way, he can immediately take both of you to safety if anything happens. Understand? Yes, Erica replied. I'm more worried about you since Rocky is with us. What will you do if the Goblin Emperor heads in your direction? She's right, boss, Sherry commented. Can't we just stay together? It will be safer that way. Don't worry about me, 13 smiled. I have my own ways to escape. Currently, the three of them were a mile away from the capital city of the goblins, which was called Valdal City. The Shard of Origin was located at the biggest structure at the northern edge of the city that served as the Goblin Emperor's palace. In order to secure it, they must first force the Goblin Emperor to leave his throne room, allowing Rocky to swoop in and steal it. 13 knew that he needed to cause as much chaos and destruction as possible in order to force the Goblin Emperor to make his appearance. For this plan, he would take Giga, Blackie, Hercules, and the two ogres, as well as all the trolls with him. With the exception of Rocky, the teenage boy had taken all of his fighting force with him. This was the only way that he could think of in order to force the Goblin Emperor to face him. However, there was also a chance that instead of the Emperor, 13's group would have to face the Goblin army stationed inside the city instead. But that wouldn't be a problem. 13 had already prepared the battlefield in his favor. Rocky had been digging since yesterday, creating countless sinkholes that would make the goblins fall to their deaths. Even if an army were to charge in 13's direction, they would not be able to do much as long as the teenage boy led them to their deaths. He had already prepared as much as he could, and all that was left was to test it. Remember this. Just stay inside Rocky, okay? 13 said firmly. The three of you will be safe as long as you are inside his mobile fortress. The teenage boy looked at Erica, Sherry, and Ratatoska with a serious expression on his face. Understood, boss, Sherry replied. I will follow your arrangement, Zion, Ratatoska stated. Don't worry, we'll be fine, Erica said. We will remain inside Rocky as you ordered, Sir Zion. 13 was already used to the sorceress's way of talking, so he shifted his attention to the Magma Balboa, who was patiently waiting for his orders. Be careful, 13 ordered. The Goblin Emperor might have left a trap to prevent anyone from getting the Shard of Origin. If you think something is fishy, feel free to abort the mission. We can always try again. Rocky nodded and told his master that he would do his best to accomplish his mission without fail. After the teenage boy gave his beast companion a few last instructions, Rocky swallowed Erica, Sherry, and Ratatoska before digging deep under the ground. He would sneak into the city and wait for the right opportunity to steal the Shard of Origin placed right beside the Goblin Emperor's throne. Tiona's clone was trailing close to Rocky, and it would report to its master in real time. 13 waited until Rocky arrived at his destination. A few minutes later, the Magma Balboa lay in wait hundreds of meters below the throne room where the Goblin Emperor currently stood guard. It's showtime, 13 declared. Let's create some trouble. Giga and the other monsters smiled evilly as they followed behind their master. The young man was currently riding on the back of Blackie, the second fastest monster in 13's monster army. Instead of hiding, Zion and his party charged straight into the gates of the city, allowing the guards to see them. They didn't even try to hide their killing intent, which made the guards sound the alarm, informing everyone that they were under attack. Hercules, the fastest monster in 13's army, was like an unstoppable juggernaut. After smashing through the wooden gates of the city, nearly all the guards that were standing next to it were killed. O1 and O2, who were only a few meters behind Hercules, started their rampage and smashed any goblins within striking range of their steel spike clubs. The trolls, on the other hand, started to throw oil lamps at the houses of the goblins, setting it ablaze. Their mission was to cause as much carnage as possible before retreating. 13, who was riding on top of Blackie, fired one arrow after another, making sure that each arrow took a life. Tiona, who was coiled up on his neck, was also commanding the members of her parade of 100 demons to assist the trolls in their mission. One of the skills they possessed was flame breath, so setting things on fire wasn't a problem for them. Soon, the dark smoke rose steadily from the city, alarming the warriors who were stationed near the Goblin Emperor's stronghold. "My lord, the city is burning," one of the Goblin shamans reported. "We are under attack." The Goblin Emperor glanced at the Shard of Origin beside him before standing up from his throne. "All of you, come with me," the Goblin Emperor ordered as he took his axe beside his throne. "We will drive out the invaders." "Yes." The Goblin Emperor then glanced at the middle-aged man, who served as his aide, and gave him a nod. The middle-aged man nodded back and pressed his palms together. "May fortune shine upon you, Lord Zorka." The Goblin Emperor didn't even bother to reply as he led his men to fight against the stupid invaders who had decided to mess with his home turf. When he was certain that Lord Zorka was no longer around, the middle-aged man looked down on the ground beside his feet and sneered. A moment later, he, too, left the throne room, leaving behind the Shard of Origin without a single guard protecting it. Rocky, who was waiting for the Goblin Emperor to leave the throne room, stayed in his position for nearly half an hour before making a move. Tiona's clone was helping him and had scouted ahead above ground. After being told that there was nothing odd, the Magma Balboa deemed that it was safe to finally steal the Shard of Origin since no one was guarding it. Of course, Rocky found it odd that no one had been left to protect the artifact that controlled the fate of the Ratmen race. However, he and Tionas had already made careful analysis of the surroundings multiple times and didn't find anything that could pose a threat to them. So after careful consideration, Rocky no longer hesitated and made his way to the artifact as fast as he could. When he was right below the Shard of Origin, Rocky opened his mouth and swallowed it whole. As soon as he confirmed that the Shard of Origin was safely deposited inside his mobile fortress, he quickly left the throne room in haste and reported to his master that he had succeeded in his mission. ****. 20 minutes before Rocky swallowed the Shard of Origin. He arrived faster than I thought he would. 13 thought as the members of the parade of 100 demons informed him that the Goblin army, led by the Goblin Emperor, was already on his way to deal with them. "Everyone, retreat." 13 ordered. Giga, Hercules, the ogres, and the trolls didn't hesitate to stop whatever they were doing and ran toward the gate as fast as they could. Worried that one of his monsters would get caught by the Goblin army, 13 stayed for a bit and was the last one to leave the gates of the city. Fortunately, the monsters under his command were very strong, so they were easily able to deal with the goblins who had tried to attack them earlier. Even as they retreated, they could feel the overwhelming aura of the Goblin Emperor who was running at them at full speed. With a mighty roar, Lord Zorka leaped high into the air and jumped over the city gates, landing hundreds of meters away from the two ogres, who had the slowest speed among 13's monster army. O1 and O2 glanced behind them, but they never stopped running. Both of them were rank 5 sovereigns. Even though they were 2 ranks below Rocky, both of them could overpower the Magma Balboa when it came to pure, raw strength. However, even the two of them understood that the Goblin Emperor behind them was stronger than them by a large margin. Goblins were all-rounder in nature. They didn't have a particular strong point. However, they were perfectly balanced fighters with the speed and the strength, as well as the intelligence to outwit and outmaneuver their enemies. And as a rank 8 sovereign, the Goblin Emperor was naturally way stronger, faster, and more intelligent than his subjects. O1 and O2 understood that they had no chance of winning, but they weren't too worried about the monster behind them. They simply followed behind their master's orders and ran to the location that he had designated. The 4-meter-tall Goblin Emperor sneered at the fleeing ogres, who was slightly bigger than him. When the Goblin Emperor was only dozens of meters away from O1 and O2, the ground under his feet suddenly gave way, catching him by surprise. However, his instinct allowed him to subconsciously jump and evade the pitfall that was waiting for him. O1 and O2, who seemed to have already expected that the Goblin Emperor would manage to dodge the trap that was prepared for him, both stopped and swung their spiked steel clubs at the Goblin Emperor, who had lost his balance mid-air. Lord Zorka wasn't fazed and used his great axe to block the combined assault of the two ogres, blocking their blows completely. But the momentum still pushed him back, making him almost fall into the hole that was hundreds of meters deep. Just as the Goblin Emperor was about to launch his counterattack, several arrows flew in his direction, forcing him to block for the second time. This gave O1 and O2 time to distance themselves from the Goblin Emperor and regroup with 13's party. Meanwhile, the Goblin warriors, who were following behind their lord, also fell into one of the sinkholes that Rocky had made beforehand, stopping their advance. Right now, they were in the killing zone that 13 had prepared for them, allowing the teenage boy to decrease their fighting force drastically. 13 stared at the rank 8 sovereign, who was also looking back at him with an eerie calmness that made the teenage boy frown. What's this uneasy feeling? 13 thought. Something doesn't feel right. Everything feels too easy. Despite the fact that the Goblin Emperor was standing right in front of him and away from the throne room, the teenage boy couldn't shake off the feeling that things were going too well. Although he was confident with the plan he had devised beforehand, the calmness of the Goblin Emperor unnerved him. Both sides were currently in a face-off, with 13's team taking a defensive stance against their enemy. However, the Goblin Emperor simply stood where he was and stayed down at his enemies. Suddenly, Tiona's clone informed him that they had successfully retrieved the Shard of Origin from the throne room, making 13 sigh in relief. However, at the same time he received the clone's report, the teenage boy noticed that the corner of the Goblin Emperor's lips rose up into a smile. "Fools," Lord Zorka said as the smile on his face became a sneer. "You underestimated me too much." Without warning, the Goblin Emperor jumped into the sinkhole behind him and vanished from sight. This sudden act confused not only 13, but also his monster friends who had already prepared themselves to duke it out with the Goblin Emperor. Meanwhile, inside Rocky's mobile fortress, "We succeeded!" Ratatoska exclaimed as he touched the surface of the orange crystal. "It is really the Shard of Origin. My people are saved." Eriko and Sherry, who were also very happy that their mission was a complete success, moved closer to the Shard of Origin to give it a closer look. However, their surroundings darkened all of a sudden, as if a shadow had blocked the source of the light inside the mobile fortress. A moment later, Erika's, Sherry's, and Ratatoska's bodies all stiffened when a powerful pressure descended upon them. The three could feel a presence behind them. They wanted to look, but their bodies had frozen in place, unable to even move a single muscle. Suddenly, a cry of pain escaped Ratatoska's lips as a fist collided with his body, sending him flying a good distance away from where he stood. Erika roared as she forced herself to break free from the paralysis she was feeling, covering herself and Sherry in blazing flames. Just as the sorceress was about to cast a fireball at point-blank range, the Goblin Emperor flicked his finger and hit Erika's stomach, sending her skidding and rolling on the ground for several meters before coming to a complete stop. Sherry, who was now paralyzed by fear, found herself staring at the face of the Goblin Emperor, who was looking at her with a devilish smirk on its hideous face. Just like what he had done to Erika, the Goblin Emperor flicked his finger and sent the teenage girl flying. Lord Zorka made sure to control his strength. He didn't want to kill the two girls, only incapacitate them. The Goblin Emperor then glanced at the Shard of Origin and picked it up with one hand. Although it was supposed to weigh a ton, he could easily lift it with one hand because he was now its owner, making it weightless in his position. "I'll be taking the two of you with me." Lord Zorka walked toward the two fallen girls, who had been knocked unconscious and fell to the ground. "You will become fine breeding horses." However, when he was only a few meters away from the two girls, the ground around him trembled. The next second, the Goblin Emperor found himself standing just outside his city, not knowing how he got there. He wasn't aware that Rocky had ejected him from inside his mobile fortress before hurrying to his master's side to tell him of what happened to Erika, Sherry, and Ratatoska. The moment Zion heard the news, he immediately summoned the Magma Balboa to his side and ordered it to take him inside the mobile fortress as fast as possible. When he entered, he was welcomed with the sight of Erika and Sherry, lying unconscious on the ground with blood seeping at the corner of their lips. The teenage boy stood rooted in place, reminded of multiple scenes from the past that he never wanted to see repeating. Tiona, who was coiled on his neck, used her head to headbutt her master and snap him out of his daze. Fortunately, It only took Tiona one strike to help 13 regain his bearings, allowing him to move and give the 3 injured individuals some healing potions to help with their recovery. Once he was certain that their lives were not in danger, the teenage boy stood up and ordered Rocky to take him to where the Goblin Emperor was. The Magma Balboa didn't know what his master was thinking, but he still obeyed his orders. Meanwhile, above ground, Lord Zorka, who hadn't moved from his location, smirked when he sensed the presence of a monster headed in his direction. He and the middle-aged man already knew that their enemy had a way to travel without being detected by anyone, so they already prepared a strategy in advance to capture the people responsible for raising the goblin camps in his territory. The middle-aged man had imbued a spell on the Shard of Origin, allowing the Goblin Emperor to teleport to its location. This was the strategy they devised in order to catch their enemies by surprise. And it worked perfectly. The Goblin Emperor was able to subjugate the thieves, but it didn't expect that it would be ejected from wherever he had been earlier. Suddenly, a human boy appeared several meters away from the Goblin Emperor and was looking at the monster with eyes filled with hatred. "Foolish human. You should have escaped while you had the chance," Lord Zorka said in disdain. "Don't tell me you've come to surrender those 2 females to me. If yes, I will happily accept your offering and spare your life." Zion didn't answer and simply raised his hand. A moment later, the parade of 100 demons was firmly in his grasp, fluttering in the wind. The symbol 13 glowed in golden letters, as if making its presence known to the world. The Goblin Emperor watched as the teenage boy's body was suddenly enclosed in a black suit of armor from head to foot. Green glowing eyes radiated from the helmet, making him look like an avatar of vengeance that had descended upon the world. Giga, Blackie, Rocky, Hercules, the ogres, and trolls appeared behind their master, all roaring in anger and ready to fight. When he saw Erica and Sherry's injured states, he was reminded of his hosts who had died pitiful deaths. Back then, he couldn't do anything except grieve for their untimely and unfair demise. Those pent-up emotions that he had locked deep inside his soul core all rose to the surface like a raging flame that could not be stopped. "Deal with the small fries, and make sure none of them interfere," 13 ordered. "I'll kill this bastard myself." Without another word, 13 took a step forward, summoning the members of the parade of 100 demons, who would fight alongside their master, for the first time since its inception. The flag of the parade of 100 demons fluttered in the breeze as 13 faced off against the Goblin Emperor. Giga, Blackie, Rocky, Hercules, the ogres, and the trolls spread out. They faced the Goblin army in order to prevent them from interfering with their master's battle. As much as they were worried about 13, they were familiar with their master and one that he wouldn't fight a battle he had no chance of winning. "You're very brave for a human," Lord Zorka said. "So you're the mastermind behind the death of my people." 13 didn't bother to reply and only summoned the demons who would be fighting alongside him. This was his first time fighting a rank 8 sovereign with his divine artifact. He knew that what he was doing was reckless, but the raging anger in his heart wouldn't subside unless he personally ended the life of the monster in front of him, who dared to hurt Erica and Sherry, whom he recognized as his people. Seeing that the human didn't seem to have any plans to talk, the Goblin Emperor laughed before raising his war axe. "I'm going to enjoy hearing your screams as I tear off your limbs one by one." Lord Zorka sneered. "So any last words, human?" "You talk too much for someone who's about to die." 13's robotic voice escaped from his lips. This was one of the functions of his Soul Eater armor, altering his voice in order to ensure that his identity wouldn't be compromised if he ever decided to personally step onto the battlefield to fight. Dying screams reverberated in the surroundings as the goblins were annihilated by 13's monster army, which consisted of monsters whose weakest members were rank 4 alpha monsters. Rocky was a rank 7 sovereign, while Giga, Blackie, and Hercules were rank 6 sovereigns. O1, O2, and T1 were all rank 5 sovereigns, boasting incredible fighting prowess. To make matters worse, all of them were riding on mounts, which were rank 4 monsters. The Troll Raiders and Troll Shamans, who were rank 4 alpha monsters, also had similar mounts, which made them very deadly in combat. Although the goblins greatly outnumbered them, The teamwork that 13's army had forged through countless life-and-death battles made them a force to reckon with. The Goblin Emperor glanced at his subordinates and understood that he needed to finish his fight against the human boy, or his army would continue to suffer countless losses. So without another word, he let out a war cry and charged in 13's direction with his weapon raised high. 13 remained standing in place and waited until the Goblin Emperor entered his striking range. The moment Lord Zorka was only a few meters away from him, 13 took a step forward. As if by magic, he reappeared right beside the Goblin Emperor, passing by his side. Although caught completely by surprise, Lord Zorka glanced at the human who was wearing a demonic-like black armor before swinging his axe for the kill. But just like what happened earlier, 13 disappeared from where he stood, and the Goblin Emperor's axe embedded itself on the ground, hitting only air. A moment later, the Goblin Emperor felt a prickling pain on his arms and legs as dozens of monsters bit into his body. With a shout filled with anger, the Goblin Emperor swatted all the monsters with his axe, slicing them in half. In an instant, the monsters he killed exploded and turned into blood mist, which stuck onto his body and covered him from head to foot. Once he was done dealing with the monsters, he glanced at his surroundings and found his opponent in the same place where the other party stood earlier. Truth be told, 13 didn't really move when he took a step forward earlier. What the Goblin Emperor saw was a true illusion, which was very hard to see through because it looked so real. It was the ability of the rank 3 illusion sprite, which was a very rare monster that was given to him by the Leventis clan while he was still in Pangea. Even though he couldn't use any skills, his beast companion, Tiona, could. With their senses linked together, the two of them had achieved perfect synchronization. 13 was wielding the power of the parade of 100 demons through Tiona, allowing him to wield them as he wished. Perhaps realizing that he had been tricked, the Goblin Emperor roared in anger and lunged in 13's direction with bloodshot eyes. He was truly angered, unwilling to accept that he let a weakling treat him like a fool, so he no longer held back and went for the kill. But just as he swung his axe to split the human in half, 13 had moved before him as if he had predicted where the blow would land. However, the Goblin Emperor was faster than him, so it was impossible for him to dodge the attack completely. At least, that was what Lord Zorka thought. Contrary to the Goblin King's expectations, 13 was able to perfectly dodge his attack, and even had the leeway to stab the bladed tip of the parade of 100 demons at the Goblin Emperor's neck. 13 then skidded backward as if skating on ice. Ow! Lord Zorka glared at the human who managed to escape his killing blow. He couldn't understand why his attack, which should have cleaved the bastard in half, didn't work. But before he could even understand what was happening, several arrows rained down upon him. The humanoid monsters who were part of the 100 demons all had bows and arrows laced with Tiona's poison. But Lord Zorka ignored them and focused his attention on 13, believing that as long as he killed the summoner, all summons would disappear alongside him. Stone skin, the Goblin Emperor shouted, making his body as hard as stone, which made the arrows harmlessly bounce off his body. However, there was one particular arrow that pierced through his leg, which shocked the Goblin Emperor. As he was about to pull it out, the arrow moved and started to bite into the flesh it had managed to pierce and injected deadly venom into the Goblin King's body. Similar to how a leech started sucking blood the moment it came into contact with human or animal skin, the living arrow went all out until it was squeezed to death by the Goblin Emperor, exploding into a blood mist. It was none other than Tiona's clone, which had hardened itself to adamantine, allowing it to pierce through the Goblin Emperor's body. When Lord Zorka once again glanced in the direction of the demonic human, he found himself staring at dozens of them, spread out all around him. All of them were holding a bow and arrow in their hands, ready to strike for the second time. Lord Zorka unleashed a war cry that had a similar effect to Dragon's Fear. It was an ability that could paralyze weak-willed opponents and slow down their movements. But who was 13? He wasn't someone who would be affected by such an ability. All the true illusions created by the members of the parade of 100 demons all fired at the same time, forcing the Goblin Emperor to take a defensive stance as he scanned the surroundings to find the real body of the one giving him a hard time. From the very start, he believed that he could easily kill the human because he was weaker than him. However, Contrary to his expectations of overpowering the other party one-sidedly, the boy was able to dodge his attacks at close range and even trick his eyes. This was something that no ordinary human could do, so he decided to treat this battle as if he were fighting someone of the same rank as him. One hit. Lord Zorka gritted his teeth in frustration as dozens of arrows flew in his direction. I only need to land one hit, and this boy will die in my hands. He was right. All it would take was to land a single hit and 13 would die in his hands. However, how he would land that single hit was a problem that he needed to solve before the human boy succeeded in the strategy that he had devised to defeat a monster that was several times stronger than him. 13 stayed coldly at the Goblin Emperor as he released the arrow in his hand. If he were fighting Lord Zorka alone, his chance of surviving would be 0. But with the power of his divine artifact, he could fight toe-to-toe with the rank 8 sovereign. Earlier, when the Goblin Emperor tried to cut him in half, 13 had reacted just as the monster made his move. His line of sight was enough to let him read the movement of his opponent's arm, allowing him to accurately predict where the hit would land. However, even with that, the Goblin Emperor outspeeded him, so it was impossible for him to dodge with just his speed alone. But he wasn't alone. There were 200 monsters fighting alongside him, and all of them had more than 100 skills at their disposal. One of these skills was telekinesis. With dozens of monsters using their ability to pull their master's body away from danger, 13 was able to dodge the killing blow that would have sliced him in half. It required great concentration and mental power to execute such a command to his subordinates, allowing him to dodge the attack that should have ended his life. While the Goblin Emperor was in a state of shock because of what just happened, 13 summoned Tiona's clone in his hand and ordered it to turn its body into adamantine. Using it as an arrow, 13 aimed at the Goblin Emperor's leg because the monster's chest area was heavily armored. Since the Goblin Emperor's exposed skin could only be found on its face, neck, arms, and legs, 13 chose to target its legs. He noticed that Lord Zorka prioritized protecting his upper body over his lower body. Because of this, he didn't hesitate to target the other party's legs, allowing Tiona's clone to release its venom after managing to pierce the monster's skin. In short, 13 was dancing between a very thin line between life and death, with all of his senses sharpened to its limit. One mistake. All it would take was a single mistake, and he would die without realizing his goal. However, 13 wasn't thinking about these thoughts. No, the only goal in his mind was to win. After becoming human, he felt emotions that he never felt before. Anger, sadness, happiness, and other complex emotions that made humans the way they were alien to him. However, of all the emotions that had manifested since he had been born in the world, the strongest was the desire to protect his people. The canon Fodders, who was the reason why he defied the system god. This was why when he saw Erica's and Sherry's injured states, there was only one emotion that overwhelmed every other emotion in his mind and heart. Kill. Perhaps, this was the first time that he truly wanted to kill someone else other than Aaron Ashford, who had killed his former host. But after the initial outburst, 13 regained an eerie calmness as if he had reverted to being a cold killing machine. Every step he took was measured. Every move was intentional. Every action he did was calculated. He was moving according to the most efficient way to reach his goal. 666 moves. That was the number of actions he needed to take based on the results of the simulations his soul core had run inside his head. His every action, including his steps, dodge, attack, and other movements were included in those 666 moves. And right now, he was executing his 50th step to perfection. In 13's world, there was no one else aside from him, Tiona, the 100 demons, as well as the Goblin Emperor. Everything else was shut out, including sounds, preventing him from knowing what was happening in the battle between Giga and the Goblin army. All of his concentration was poured onto his goal to defeat the Goblin Emperor. If any external force or variable were to suddenly intrude in his simulation, his life would be truly in danger, for he would not be able to react in time. However, despite this risk, he carried out his vengeance against the Goblin Emperor with a single-mindedness that would put any living existence to shame. 213 muttered as he dodged the Goblin Emperor's kick, with Tiona and her subordinates using telekinesis. 216. 13 said as he ordered Kasari to jump behind the Goblin Emperor's back and bite the monster's exposed neck. "Shut up!" Lord Zorka shouted in anger as he swatted the rat man, turning him into a blood mist. "Just die already!" By now, the Goblin Emperor's body was covered from head to toe with purple blood, which was composed of a very potent poison made from Tiona's venom. Lord Zorka was now starting to feel his body turning sluggish as the toxin inside and outside of his body started to affect his movements. For him, every second that passed felt like hours. Every minute felt like days. Every 10 minutes felt like an eternity. As the Goblin Emperor stared at his opponent, whose green glowing eyes locked onto his body with a vengeance, he couldn't help but start to feel something that he had never felt in a long time. Fear. Ever since he reached his current rank, only a handful of beings within the fractured heaven could threaten his life. This was also the reason why he boldly attacked the ancestral grounds of the Ratmen with his army and took their shard of origin in order to put their entire race under his control. Because he was strong, he could do anything he wanted without worrying about the consequences of his actions. When he teleported inside Rocky's mobile fortress, he used his power to subjugate Erica, Sherry, and Ratatoska without effort. Because he was strong, he could easily defeat his enemies, which made him arrogant. But now, his arrogance had long disappeared, replaced by anxiety. 300. 13's voice haunted him, making him feel fearful. He didn't know why the boy was counting out loud, but he had a feeling that the moment his opponent stopped counting, something bad would happen to him. 450. The Goblin Emperor didn't know how much time had passed since he started his fight against the human boy. It could have only been 10 minutes, it could have been half an hour, or maybe it had been several hours since that battle began. However, there came a time when he could no longer lift the axe in his hand, so he used what strength he had left to throw it at the hateful boy, who casually took a step sideways, making his great axe fly harmlessly past his body. 600. 13 muttered as he slapped the Goblin Emperor's face with the handle of his flag, breaking several of the monster's teeth. "No more!" Lord Zorka shouted. "Stop! I surrender!" The Goblin Emperor tried to run away, but he could no longer move his legs. The venom had already spread all over his body, making escape no longer possible. The venomous parasites were spreading venom from inside his body, weakening his regeneration ability and lowering his resistance. 660. 13's cold voice rang in Lord Zorka's ears as Zion's foot smashed on top of his head, forcing it to crash on the ground, forcing him to eat dirt. 665. 13 pointed the bladed tip of his divine artifact on the Goblin Emperor's neck, readying for the final blow. 666. As if hearing the toll of a bell, Lord Zorka knew then and there that he was now about to die. Time seemed to move in slow motion as the cold and unfeeling voice rang inside his head, heralding his death. Through his fading vision, the Goblin Emperor saw a dark shadow appear behind his enemy and raised its hand. As the bladed tip of 13's banner was about to pierce the Goblin Emperor's neck, its movement came to a complete halt. 13, who had put every ounce of his strength into this final strike, was unable to land the killing blow, a hand held onto his wrist, preventing him from thrusting his spear forward. "Let go, Metatron," 13 said coldly. "Mind your own business." The god of the Order of the Apocalypse chuckled, but he didn't let go of 13's hand. "Calm down, 13, Metatron said softly. "I have a proposal to make." "I'm not interested," 13 replied. "I'm about to earn hundreds of Apocalypse points. Don't get in my way." "Don't worry, I will give you your Apocalypse points, but hear me out first." "No, I'll kill him first, then we'll talk." Metatron sighed before opening a dimensional gate and kicking the Goblin Emperor inside of it, preventing 13 from landing the killing blow. "Cool your head off for a while, 13, Metatron said before releasing the boy's wrist. "Don't revert back to being an emotionless killing machine. That is not the way you should live your life." After saying those words, Metatron entered the dimensional gate he created. It was only then that 13 realized time had come to a complete stop after Metatron appeared. When the dimensional gate closed, time returned to normal, and the sounds in the surroundings reached his ears. However, before he could even do anything, his body swayed and collapsed to the ground. As darkness slowly descended upon him, he felt a pair of hands hold onto his body, pulling him close into a gentle embrace. Erica, who got out of Rocky's body, saw the teenage boy standing with blood flowing from his orifices. The use of telekinesis had also damaged him internally, but despite that, he continued to use it in order to fight. 13 had used everything he had to defeat the Goblin Emperor, worsening his internal injuries. Truth be told, if Metatron didn't stop him, his injuries might have reached the point of no return. Just before he was about to lose consciousness, his gaze met Erica's, and he saw the tears falling from her eyes. "Stupid girl, I'm not dead yet," 13 said. "Stop crying. You look ugly when you cry." 13 closed his eyes, losing consciousness in Erica's arms. Seeing this, the girl started to panic. She hurriedly drank a potion and pressed her lips over the teenage boy's lips, forcing him to drink the medicine down to the last drop. Under the starry skies, 13 was lying on top of a soft bed. The two moons of Solterra shone upon him, the moonlight healing his body. Knowing that their master could be healed by the moon, 13's subordinates took the most luxurious bed in the Goblin City and let their master use it as his own. Technically, the blood flowing inside 13's body was no longer that of a human, but that of the royal family of Chundria, who lived in one of the two moons that hung in the sky. Back then, to save his sisters, Shusha and Rhea, from their fates of being sacrificed as the moon princesses, he swapped blood with Rhea. His new bloodline granted him powers that even the skill ban couldn't completely restrict, for it had come from the people of the moon. If you bathe in the moonlight, you will gain a regeneration ability that will slowly heal any injuries you receive with time. This ability will work even with serious injuries, but not with fatal injuries. 13's condition wasn't at the point of no return to begin with, so with the healing potion Erica had fed him, paired with the regenerative abilities of the royal bloodline of Chundria, his injuries were healing well. After 13 took Rhea's royal bloodline and exchanged it with his own, she was allowed to be reborn as an ordinary human. With human blood running in her veins, her curse of being the Moon Princess finally came to a stop and passed on to the teenage boy, who became her doting brother after rebirth. But since 13 was a boy, the Artemian King's 100-year plan had been completely ruined. Not to mention that the latter's only passage to the world of Solterra had been destroyed after the battle in the Arcadia archipelago. If he wished to seek vengeance against 13, he must find other ways to descend upon Solterra. However, that would be difficult, for Laplace Demon and the One would not stand by idly and let him do as he pleased. While the teenage boy was sleeping, gradually recovering, Erica and Sherry sat on top of his bed and held the teenage boy's left and right hand. Although his face was still pale, the faint silvery glow that covered his entire body at least assured them that he was getting better slowly but surely. "Have you heard about the story about the Moon Princess?" Sherry asked without bothering to glance at Erica, who was on the opposite side of the bed. "Even those living under the rock have heard of it by now," Erica replied. "Didn't they even make a movie based on that story?" "I like that movie," Sherry commented. "Well, it's not too shabby." Erica smirked. The child actor who played Zion's role was funny. "Right. I heard that the one who nominated that child actor to play that role is this guy right here. It seems that he brute-forced his way to become the vice director of that movie." Sherry smiled faintly because she could see that happening. After spending a month with Zion, she found out that he was a very down-to-earth person. He wasn't like those arrogant young masters who hailed from the monarch families and prestigious families, who usually looked down on others because of their background. There was even more than one occasion when Zion referred to his grandfather, Arthur, as a henpecked husband and soon-to-be patriarch of the Leventis branch family. But despite all of those, Sherry's impression of the young man was that he was a strict yet dependable leader who looked out for his subordinates in his own way. While she didn't know why he had chosen her to become his second-in-command, she learned many things while accompanying him in her first wandering. "So, is the war finally over?" Sherry asked. "Yes," Erica replied. "The Shard of Origin is now in our possession. Kasari has also used it to inform his kin that the Goblin Emperor is dead. But since it is a one-way communication, We still don't know how the rat men reacted, but it is safe to say that they no longer have a reason to continue this war. This will also ease the burden of the lizard men and the wanderers fighting alongside them. Sherry sighed before shifting her gaze to the two moons in the sky. Another unbelievable tale will surely spread about Zion, Sherry said. Kasari didn't hold back and told the rat men to spread the word that the one who killed the Goblin Emperor was a human boy named Zion Leventis. Well, it's not really a big deal, I think, Erica commented. Do you know, when he was training me in the hero party, I asked him a question. If you were to fight a rank 8 sovereign on your own, would you have a chance of winning? Take a guess what he replied to me back then. Tell me, Sherry insisted. This brat raised his chin arrogantly and said, Isn't it just a rank 8 sovereign? I eat them for breakfast, Erica replied as he poked the sleeping boy's nose repeatedly. Well, he didn't fight the Goblin Emperor on his own, but it doesn't change the fact that he did fight him. Metatron had dispelled 13's armor, as well as the black flag of the parade of 100 demons, before he left the young man. This was his way of hiding one of Zion's secrets, ensuring that other people like Erica would not know about it. Is he really a rookie? Sherry asked with amusement while watching Erica repeatedly poke Zion's nose. He is, Erica replied firmly. He is a super rookie. Tiona, who was resting on top of 13's chest, nodded her head in agreement. She initially wanted to stop Erica from poking her master's nose, but she was also too exhausted, so she decided that she would tell her master about it after he regained consciousness. The only one that remained with 13 until the end was her. All the members of the parade of 100 demons had died and were no longer able to spawn again because they had reached their limit. However, it didn't matter to her. The only thing that truly mattered to the Domini Mortis was 13's survival. As long as he was alive, she would remain by his side and accompany him on his journey in a world where many wanderers had lost their lives. Rocky traveled during the day and rested during the night, allowing his master to bathe in the moonlight. 4 days had passed since 13 won the battle against the Goblin Emperor, and his group was currently making their way back to the area where the Lizard Men tribes were located. Due to Ratatoska's request, they made a few stops at different rat men undercities, where they inquired if news about the Goblin Emperor's death had spread. Just as expected, the rat men had indeed received the news through the power of the Shard of Origin. The reigning rat men king even asked if the Shard of Origin could be returned to them, but Giga, Blackie, and Hercules said no. Until their master had opened their eyes, they planned on keeping the Shard of Origin with them for safekeeping. Of course, the rat men king, as well as his subordinates, didn't like this answer. But what could they do about it? Rocky could easily expel them from his mobile fortress and run away deep underground. There was no possible way for them to catch the Magma Balboa, so the only thing they could do was reluctantly agree and wait for 13 to wake up. Of course, Rocky didn't stay in their undercities to wait for his master to wake up. He continued to travel toward the Lizard Men tribes, understanding that his master would want to be there when he woke up. Having served 13 for years, Giga, Blackie, Rocky, and Hercules knew what kind of person their master was. If he could take control over an entire race with the Shard of Origin, would he really obediently return it to them? Of course not. 13 was neither a good nor bad person, but he could be greedy at times. Very greedy. With such a divine artifact in his possession, there was no way he wouldn't use it for his own good, right? The Ratman King knew that this possibility existed as well, so he had begged Ratatoska to keep the Shard of Origin safe and to also convince Zion to return it to them. Of course, the White Ratman, who was the hero of the Ratman race, promised to do it. But deep inside, he was afraid of the teenage boy, especially after undergoing the hellish training that he had to go through since the time he had met him. Finally, a week later, 13 finally opened his eyes, which made Erica and Sherry finally breathe a sigh of relief. About time you woke up, Erica complained. I no longer need to bathe you every day. 13 blinked once then twice before raising his hand as if to ask Erica to give him something. What are you doing? Erica frowned as he looked at 13's hand. Compensation, 13 replied. For sexual harassment. Who? Erica couldn't believe that the teenage boy had the audacity to ask her for compensation when she made sure to clean his body every day out of the goodness of her heart. "What are you talking about? You touched my family jewels, so you need to pay for it," 13 replied. "Excuse me." Erica, who was so close to giving Zion a good smacking, asked while raising her fist. "Do you think I have interest in your little snake?" "Oh, I'm not talking about you, Tiona. No offense." Tiona nodded in understanding before flicking her tongue on 13's cheek as if giving him a kiss. "Little snake." 13 scoffed. "You dare call my mighty dragon a little snake?" "Ha ha ha." Erica laughed out loud while holding her stomach. "What the hell? You call that a mighty dragon? Well, I have to admit that it looked cute in its own way. Let's see if you can continue laughing once I'm done with you," 13 replied. "Huh? Who's afraid of who? Bring it on." Famous last words. "I'll take a picture of you doing a peace sign and spread it on the internet." Sherry watched this bickering from the side and smiled faintly. Although Zion looked a bit lethargic, she could see that the young man was well and good. "The two of you are like a married couple," Sherry commented. "So when is the wedding? Who will marry this twerp?" Erica snorted. "The only thing good about him is his influence. Who will marry this auntie?" 13 replied. "Just look at her. You can instantly tell that her menopause starts next year." "Excuse me." Erica pinched 13's cheek. "I'm only 17. How can I have menopause, you brat?" "The color of your hair should be red, not dark blue," 13 commented after prying Erica's hand from his cheek. "Wait, it should be brown. Similar to the color of poop because the head it's attached to looks like poop." "Bastard, I'll end you." "Oh boy, I still haven't recovered. Just where do you think you are touching?" Giga, Blackie, Hercules, the ogres, and the trolls watched as Erica shook their master's body with smiles on their faces. They had been worried for the past few days, so seeing that their master had the energy to bicker and frolic with Erica put their minds and hearts at ease. A few minutes later, 13 finally managed to break free from the sorceress headlock. He was still feeling weak, which was the side effect of pushing himself to his limit. It was for this reason that he was unable to overpower Erica right away. Fortunately, Sherry soon stepped in and helped 13, separating him from the sorceress, who was having fun messing with him in his weakened state. After breaking away from Erica's grasp, the teenage boy asked Tiona and Sherry what happened while he was unconscious. Several minutes later, he now had a general understanding of what transpired during the last few days. "All of you did well," 13 said to his monster army. "We worked hard to get the Shard of Origin, so it's only natural for us to keep it." Giga and the others exchanged knowing glances because they had guessed right. Ratatoska, who heard the teenage boy's words, immediately pleaded for 13 to return the Shard of Origin to his people. "Tell me, where's the safest place to keep this Shard of Origin?" 13 asked the White Rat Man, who was now kneeling in front of him. "In the Ratman's ancestral grounds." Ratatoska replied. "Fool." 13 crossed his arms over his chest. "If that place is safe, then how did the Goblin Emperor manage to take it? Then, where is the safest place?" Ratatoska inquired. "Hey, of course," 13 answered. "Do you think someone can take the Shard of Origin inside Rocky's mobile fortress?" "Well, you're not wrong. But..." Ratatoska couldn't deny that what 13 said was true. Now that 13 had said it, the mobile fortress was indeed the safest place he could think of. If the Shard of Origin stayed with Rocky, no one would be able to find it even if they tried. "Don't worry. I'll hold on to it only for safekeeping." 13 patted the White Ratman's shoulder. "It's not like I'm planning to use your race to fight my battles for me, you know." "Really?" Ratatoska asked, feeling renewed hope that the teenage boy wouldn't use the power of the Shard of Origin to take control of their race. "Really?" 13 nodded. "You and your race are in good hands." "Thank you very much." Ratatoska bowed his head repeatedly. "Oh, you sweet summer child," Erica commented. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." Excuse me." Ratatoska, who heard Erica's comment, looked in her direction. But the young lady only shook her head and pretended that nothing was wrong. In order to change the topic, 13 told Ratatoska that if he wasn't convinced that he would not do anything with the Shard of Origin, the Rat Man was free to accompany him on his journey. Naturally, Ratatoska welcomed this proposal. He failed to notice the looks of pity Giga and the other monsters were giving him because the young Rat Man had unknowingly signed up to become one of 13's henchmen, just like Tyga, who was currently traveling somewhere in the central regions of Solterra. After a few more days of travel, 13 finally arrived at the valley where the main battle between the Rat Men and Lizard Men took place. Drazit had told him its location, so he immediately ordered Rocky to head in that direction. Tiona's clone, who had scouted ahead, informed him that there were over 100 Rat Men who stayed behind and had set up camp within the valley. They were a sizable force, but their number was not enough to challenge the combined armies of the Lizard Men. It might just be the officers of the Rat Men who want to meet me, 13 thought. Erica and Sherry had already told him that the king of the Rat Men had mentioned in passing that their commanders would be waiting to meet him in Keebo Valley. Of course, they were most likely there to convince the teenage boy to return the Shard of Origin to them. Unfortunately, 13 had no intention of agreeing to that, at least not while they were still within the fractured heaven. Since he didn't want to meet the Rat Men at this point in time, 13, Erica, Sherry, and Ratatoska headed straight toward the Lizard Men together. The teenage boy was riding on the back of the Blade Panther alongside Sherry. Erica was riding on Blackie, while Ratatoska was riding a dire wolf they had bullied along the way. Since it couldn't possibly win against 13's monster army, it agreed to become the White Ratman's mount to save its life. When the watchman saw them riding toward their camp, he immediately shouted and rang the bell to alarm everyone of 13's arrival. Just like the Rat Men, the majority of the Lizard Men had returned to their own tribes. Only the high-ranking officers of their army, as well as those with high influence in their tribes, remained. Since Drazit told them that the possibility of Zion heading toward the Keebo Valley was high, they decided to stay and wait for his arrival. The other wanderers, who were led by David, also stood at the gates with excitement. When they were informed that the Rat Men had raised the white flag during one of their skirmishes, they knew then and there that Zion Leventis had succeeded in his mission. Drazit was the happiest with the boy's success. After all, he was the one who risked himself to convince the other great chieftains to have faith in him. Before 13 could even dismount from the Blade Panther, a very happy Drazit grabbed hold of him and raised him high as if he was some kind of trophy. Seeing the teenage boy who put an end to the war, all the Lizard Men cheered, which spread in the valley, alerting the Rat Men who were camping hundreds of meters from the Lizardmen's stronghold. "I knew you could do it." Drazit laughed before letting the boy's feet touch the ground. "You didn't betray my trust." "Well done, Zion." "You also did well, Lord Drazit," 13 replied. "You managed to delay the war long enough for me to succeed." The Lizard Men commander smiled as he patted Zion's shoulder. "Let's just say that we both succeeded." "Deal." "Deal." 13 nodded before shifting his gaze to the wanderers, who looked back at him with smiles on their faces. Even Elyon, who didn't like Zion, was happy, feeling surreal about the fact that they could finally leave and continue their mission. After seeing that the wanderers didn't look ill-treated while he was away, 13 shifted his attention back to Drazit and asked him a question. "Will the other great chieftains honor the agreement?" 13 asked. "They will," Drazit replied. "In fact, the other humans in the other settlements are already on their way here." After hearing the commander's reply, 13 was introduced to the other Lizard Men who also wanted to meet him. Of course, the teenage boy didn't mind making connections since the Lizard Men were one of the biggest factions that thrived in Fractured Heaven. An hour later, several visitors arrived at the camp, and they were none other than the Rat Men, who had also come to meet 13. One of them was Lord Zek, who had collaborated with Drazit to minimize the casualties during the war between the two races. Out of all the Rat Men, it was safe to say that he was the one who wanted to meet 13 the most. The moment he saw the human boy, he could tell that he wasn't a simple human either. "Thank you for saving us from the Goblin Emperor's control." Lord Zek bowed his head in a respectful manner. "Our clan owes you a great debt, and we will repay it to the best of our ability." "I expect great things from you, Lord Zek," 13 replied. "I hope we get along from now on." "Of course." Lord Zek nodded. I also received reports that the humans that we have captured during the war are also now headed here in Keebo Valley. We are doing our best to bring them here as fast and safely as possible. 13 smiled faintly because Tiona was the one who ordered Ratatoska to inform the Ratmen through the Origin Shard to free all the humans that they had captured. She added that they should escort them to Keebo Valley as fast as possible or else they would be sorry. Since the Origin Shard was still not within their possession, the Ratmen had no choice but to obey Tiona's orders. 13 was quite happy that Tiona had dealt with this issue while he was unconscious, which saved him time and effort. On the other hand, the captured humans were also spared from further suffering. Although the Ratmen seemed peaceful right now, it didn't change the fact that they were a vicious race that wouldn't bat an eye when it came to eating humans until nothing but bones were left. They were only behaving now because 13 had the Shard of Origin in his possession. But he was certain that the moment it was returned to the Ratmen, they would revert back to their old ways without fail. Lord Zek, who also wished to retrieve the Shard of Origin, did his best to flatter 13, calling him a valiant hero and the savior of their race. 13 accepted this praise in stride while being vague as to when he would return the divine artifact of the Ratmen. 13 had been busy making preparations for their journey toward the Wenpolis Stronghold, their final destination, in the past few days. According to Drazit, the Wenpolis Stronghold was a small fortress that existed even before the lizard men migrated into the fractured heaven. They believed that it once belonged to the humans, who were now ruling the northern lands. However, something must have happened that forced the humans to evacuate and leave the stronghold, which was now in ruins. But there was one thing that remained intact within the stronghold, and it was none other than a one-way portal. The lizard men didn't know where this portal led to, for anyone who had tried to enter it was never seen or heard from again. After hearing Drazit's story, 13 and the other wanderers were convinced that the portal would lead them to their next destination. Since they had all been given the same chain quest, it meant that they had no choice but to enter the portal in order to continue their mission. Contrary to the other wanderers who were rejoicing, perhaps thinking that they would finally finish their first mission, 13 didn't react that much, for he understood that their next mission would be several times harder than the first. But he didn't want the other teenagers to worry, so he didn't say anything about it and simply ordered everyone to cut some trees, which they would use to build more wagons for their upcoming journey. Since all the wanderers in the fractured heaven would be joining them, they needed to increase the number of wagons to make sure that all of them would be able to ride on one. Of course, the lizard men and rat men were more than happy to help. The two factions even decided to compete over which side would be able to build the most wagons using 13's blueprint. A week later, over 400 wanderers arrived at the Keebo Valley, which surprised everyone. Only then did Erica, David, and the other apostles realize the gravity of the situation that they were in. It was an open secret that the number of wanderers participating in a mission was correlated to how dangerous it was. Getting cold feet. 13 asked as he looked at Erica's pale face. What are you talking about? Erica stuttered. How can I possibly get cold feet? I specialize in fire magic, you know. How about you, Sherry? 13 inquired, feeling nervous. Yes, Sherry didn't bother to hide her anxiety. As Zion's right-hand woman, the responsibility that would soon be placed on her shoulder was quite heavy. 13 planned to make the two girls his vice-commanders, so they could help him manage the wanderers into an organized unit. Right now, over 600 wanderers were gathered in Keebo Valley, which was a number that even 13 had never seen in the past. On his missions in the Valbera and Arcadia archipelago, the number of wanderers in a mission never surpassed 300. But now, they had double that number, making the apostles feel very anxious. 13 patted Erica's shoulder and asked her to follow him to stand at the elevated platform to address everyone who was now waiting for his announcement. He asked Erica to join him, wanting to use her high popularity as a member of the hero party. When the wanderers saw the two of them appear, all of them cheered at the same time. Erica might be popular, but no one in Pangea didn't know who Zion Leventis was. If the beautiful sorceress was a star, Zion was a superstar. So for those who were experiencing their first wandering, seeing him was like winning the lottery. In their point of view, he was the ticket that would allow them to return to their loved ones who were waiting for them in Pangea. Sherry, who was only known by the original members of 13's group, stood on the teenage boy's right side and did her best to stay calm. Although she was feeling nervous, she was able to stand her ground because the teenage boy was standing in front of her. 13 allowed them to cheer for a while before he raised his hand to calm everyone down. "I'm glad that all of you are able to arrive here safely," 13 said. "But our journey is far from over. If all of you are willing to follow my orders, I will do my best to ensure that the majority of you will be able to complete your missions. I will not lie to all of you. The chances of you dying in our next mission are very high. While I do not know what we will have to face when we reach the Wenpolis Stronghold, I do know that if all of us work together, we can make a difference." 13 paused for a bit to let his words sink in. A minute later, he raised 3 fingers as he scanned the faces of the wanderers in front of him. 3 days, 13 stated. "In 3 days, we will start our journey. Until then, all of you are going to help with the preparation to gather food and water for our journey. Last but not the least, I will be assigning captains who will lead a team with 20 members each. Of course, if you prefer to form smaller groups, that's fine as well. All I want is for the captain should be responsible enough to follow orders and lead their teams properly." 13 then used his thumb to point at Erica, who was standing on his left side. "While I will be your commander, I will have 2 vice commanders to help me manage all of you," 13 declared. The first one is none other than the sorceress of the hero party, Erica. The wanderers once again erupted into cheers as they looked at the beautiful sorceress whom they had seen many times on television. With her long, dark blue hair and good looks, Erica was a stunning beauty who could make any man turn their head to look at her. When the cheering died down a bit, 13 glanced at his right side and introduced the young lady with short blonde hair and blue eyes who looked like a delicate-looking boy. "Her name is Sherry Weaver, and she is my second-in-command. Just like Erica, she holds the position of vice commander, so please cooperate with her, and make sure to listen to her orders. Her orders are my orders. If you defy her, you are defying me. That said, make sure to remember that, okay?" Everyone glanced at the pretty lady who was doing her best to keep her head high and not run away out of anxiety. Although she might not have noticed it, 13 was actually helping her become accustomed to carrying heavy responsibilities, which would only become heavier as they challenged the next mission that they were about to face. 13 eyed the god of the apocalypse with a calm expression on his face. On the other hand, Metatron was casually eating a fish cracker. "You want some?" Metatron asked. "No," 13 replied. "You already know why I'm here." "No, I don't. How can I know if you don't tell me?" "Huh." 13 heaved a deep sigh before glancing at the rank 8 Goblin Emperor, who was looking back at him anxiously. Originally, the Goblin Emperor thought that 13 was just a weakling he could casually kill without too much effort. Now he knew that reality was different. Using his uncanny ability to read and predict his opponent's movements, the human boy was able to not only dodge the monster's attacks but also launch his own counterattack. If not for the fact that Metatron came to stop 13 by dealing the final blow, the Goblin Emperor would have been dead by now. Seeing that Metatron was playing coy, the teenage boy decided to get straight to the point and get it over with. "Why did you stop me from killing that bastard?" 13 even pointed at the Goblin Emperor to ensure that the god of the Order of the Apocalypse couldn't pretend that he didn't know what he was talking about. "That's because I pity you." 13, Metatron replied. "Pity me?" 13 frowned. "Why should you pity me?" The teenage boy had thought of many reasons why Metatron had interfered with his battle, but pity wasn't one of them. This was why he was genuinely confused with Metatron's answer. No matter how hard he thought about it, he couldn't think of any reason as to why he should be pitied. "It seems that you still don't understand what I'm talking about," Metatron commented. "But that's fine. Allow me to make you understand. Simply put, among the members of the Apocalypse, you are the weakest of them all. Are you following me?" 13 nodded because that much was true. Compared to the Magian princes and princesses, he was truly the weakest among them all. "Because of this, I decided to offer a proposal to you," Metatron said after making sure that 13 was paying close attention to him. "A proposal?" 13 frowned. "Yes, a proposal that can make you less pitiful." Metatron nodded. "I'm sure that you will agree to it as well." The frown on 13's face deepened, but he still gestured for Metatron to continue talking. It wouldn't hurt for him to hear what he had to say because it might actually be a good thing. I've made a decision to let you capture monsters who are rank 8 and above and make your subordinates, Metatron stated. But there is one condition. These monsters must be personally defeated by you. If you defeat them alongside Tiona, then that's also fine. However, if you defeat them using the power of the parade of 100 demons, it will not be counted. Simply put, you are free to use any method. You can also scheme and have others fight for you. As long as you are the one about to land the killing blow, the condition will be met, and I will capture these monsters to become your subordinates. Last but not the least, even though these subordinates have been captured, you may not order them or summon them right away. Only after you capture at least 5 monsters will you be allowed to call them to fight by your side. I will count the Goblin Emperor as one of them, so you need 4 more. With this, you will have a fighting force that will catch up to the other members of the Order of the Apocalypse. What do you say? Isn't it a brilliant idea? It's indeed a brilliant idea. 13 nodded. But are there no strings attached to this? Ho-ho, so you're confident that you can defeat rank 8 monsters and above with just you, Tiona, and your schemes. Metatron smirked. Worry not. There are no strings attached. I like hard-working people. The god of the Order of the Apocalypse then glanced at the Goblin Emperor, making its body shudder uncontrollably. It was Metatron who accused it of the venom that had spread inside its body, preventing it from dying. But having heard everything just now, it understood that it was only alive because it was meant to become the subordinate of the human who had defeated it in battle. The Goblin Emperor was an arrogant and proud monster. However, it could still reluctantly serve someone who had managed to defeat it despite the disparity in ranks. Since you want me to become strong and catch up to the other members of the Apocalypse, why not add them to the deal as well? 13 pointed at Zed and Evuvik, who were on the other corner of the treasury. Metatron rubbed his chin as if to ponder this proposal. As mentioned earlier, he didn't mind letting 13 form a strong army of monsters. But he felt like adding the Birdman and the Brain Beetle to the agreement was overkill. Even so, as long as 13 was able to meet the conditions, he would allow him to have his way. Very well, I will agree to this condition, Metatron stated. So work hard, 13. I look forward to you catching up with the rest of your peers. After saying those words, Metatron disappeared. 13 glanced at the Goblin Emperor, the Birdman, and the Brain Beetle one last time before he, too, disappeared from the Order of the Apocalypse. Metatron's proposal was something he couldn't afford to pass up. Having many strong monsters as his subordinates would allow him to push his plan forward several times. Just having Evuvik with him would make him a force to reckon with. Adding Zed and the Goblin Emperor was merely a bonus that made the deal better. When the teenage boy had finally left, Zed and Evuvik shared a knowing glance with each other. They understood that it was truly possible for 13 to capture 4 more monsters. Once that happened, both of them would have no choice but to serve him as their master. What do you think? Zed asked. Will he succeed? Knowing him, unless he dies, this agreement is as good as done, Evuvik replied. Zed was in agreement with the Brain Beetle. Unless the teenage boy died in an attempt to capture strong monsters, this agreement between him and Metatron was already sealed in stone. After returning from the Order of the Apocalypse, 13 gazed at the lively camp of the Wanderers. The countless campfires illuminated the valley as they ate, chatted, and made their last-minute preparation for their journey when morning came. 13 had not only become their leader but also their emotional support. Since the majority of them were first-timers, most of them hoped that they would be able to survive and return back home. Erica and the other apostles did their best to assure everyone that as long as they worked together, they would be able to overcome the challenges that they were about to face. Since one of the members of the hero party and the supreme commander of the Alliance were with them, it wasn't that hard for the newcomers to be encouraged. While the teenage boy was observing the Wanderers from a distance, a familiar voice spoke behind him. A gold coin for your thoughts. 13 didn't even need to turn around to guess who it was because there was only one person who wasn't afraid to strike up a conversation with him among the Wanderers. Only a gold coin. 13 asked as he continued to gaze in the distance. I'm not that cheap. Don't act cool when it's only the two of us, Erica replied as she stood beside the teenage boy, who had disappeared after dinner. Where did you go earlier? I took a stroll to clear my thoughts, 13 answered. Erica paused for a bit as she gazed at the campfires in the distance. This reminds me of my third wandering, Erica said softly. Back then, there were around 100 wanderers with me, and we needed to reach a bridge that would take us to safety. This bridge was 50 miles away, and on our way there, we needed to play a game of hide-and-seek with the savage nomads who treated us as prey in their sport. Those who got caught died, and the number of people who managed to survive was less than 20. After crossing the bridge, the mission was cleared, and I was sent back to Pangea. I know that missions in Solterra are difficult, and sometimes borderline inhumane. However, those who survive will ultimately become stronger as they gain experience. Zion, how many do you think will survive this time? 13 didn't answer right away, as if he was seriously trying to ponder the answer to Erica's question. A few minutes later, he finally opened his lips and answered her question as honestly as he could. I don't know, 13 answered. Even I might not survive this time around. Erica, who heard his answer, frowned. It was fine if he had said that he didn't know how many would survive. But Zion saying that he might not survive this mission was not. She found his answer hard to believe. Erica wasn't aware that, similar to the wanderers who were currently in the Keebo Valley, she, too, had thought of the teenage boy beside her as her emotional support. If her emotional support suddenly collapsed, then it would greatly affect her state of mind. Are you not confident? Erica asked. Even after you managed to get the Shard of Origin from the Goblin Emperor and save us. It may sound absurd to you, but don't be naive, 13 replied. Even I have the right to bleed. Erica sighed before hugging the teenage boy from behind. Don't worry. If you faint again, I'll make sure to bathe you every day. Remind me to sue you once we return to Pangea. I dare you to sue me. Let's see if you can win. 13 and Erica spent a few minutes of silence like that. He didn't push her away nor pry her hands off his body because there was no need to do so. Erica, on the other hand, continued to hug the teenage boy because she felt safe being around him. Rihanna had once said that Zion was like a lucky charm. Regardless of how difficult the situation is, as long as he is with you, things will get solved in the end. Those were the exact words Rihanna had told her, and after seeing the teenage boy in action, Erica was now one of her believers. Finally, after nearly half an hour, 13 lightly tapped Erica's arm. Go to sleep, 13 said. We still have a long journey tomorrow. Erica pulled back. Good night, Zion. Sleep well. You too, 13 replied. Good night. 15 minutes later. 13 looked at the sleeping sorceress, who had decided to sleep in the wagon where he and Sherry stayed together. Why is she here? 13 asked Sherry, who was also about to sleep. She said you gave her permission to sleep here, Sherry replied in confusion. Did you not give her permission to sleep here? The teenage boy shook his head, but since Erica was already fast asleep, there was no point in waking her up. It's fine, 13 said. This wagon is big enough to let 12 people sleep. Good night, Sherry. Good night. Sherry nodded and laid down on the sleeping bag 13 had given her. 13 then closed the rear of the wagon to make sure that no one would disturb them during the night. Only after he was done did he take out his own sleeping bag and lay down to sleep. Good night, Tiona. Tiona flicked her tongue on 13's cheek before coiling up on his chest to rest. Tomorrow, Sherrick would guide them toward the stronghold of Wenpolis, which was located near the Lizardmen tribes. The Lizardmen once thought that taking over the stronghold was a good idea, but they soon abandoned this thought because the one-way portal would occasionally release a wave of energy that made the Lizardmen feel sick. Since then, they abandoned the stronghold and never bothered with it again. Truth be told, Sherrick and Drazit were very shocked when 13 said that all the humans would be entering the portal. They thought that they were insane, but since the teenage boy didn't look like he was joking, the only thing they could do was escort them to the stronghold to see with their eyes whether they would truly enter the portal or not. A grand procession of wooden wagons traveled across the territory of the Lizardmen. Sherrick, Drazit, and the warriors of the Varesti tribe escorted the Wanderers to ensure that the other Lizardmen tribes wouldn't harass the humans who helped them end the war. The Ratmen also volunteered to come, but 13 told them that having Ratatoska was enough as an escort from their race. With a heavy heart, they bid their farewell to Zion and repeatedly told Ratatoska to make sure that the boy wouldn't abuse the power of the Shard of Origin to command their race into submission. Being ordered by someone like the Goblin Emperor to start a war was something that they didn't want to experience a second time. No matter how much 13 assured them that he wouldn't do such a thing, it was still very hard for the Ratmen to not feel anxious since he might change his mind anytime. Ratatoska traveled alongside Zion's wagon, which was at the head of the caravan. Drazit was also on the other side of 13's wagon, acting like an escort, while Sherrick played the role of coachman. It had been 2 days since they started their journey, and according to Sherrick, it would take them 2 days more to arrive at their destination with their current pace. For the most part, the journey was uneventful. With so many humans and lizard men traveling together, it was impossible not to alarm the monsters in their path. Whether they were a herd of monsters or monsters who hunted in groups, they made sure to stay away from 13's caravan, which had enough fighting force to annihilate them. They traveled alongside the river, which had plenty of fish to feed everyone during the long journey. The lizard men were more than happy to catch fish for their benefactors, who were all headed to the place where none of the lizard men dared to stay for so long. The Wanderers, who numbered over 600, were being managed by the captains that 13 had carefully handpicked. As for the Siny faction, 13 didn't touch their group and allowed Sean to manage them like he usually did. Leon actually wanted to lead a group of his own, but ultimately decided that it was much better to just stay with his faction for the time being. "It's too peaceful," Sherry said while carving the block of wood in her hand. "It's like we just entered the eye of the storm." "Well, you're not wrong," 13, who was also carving a wooden block of wood, replied. "Once we enter the one-way portal, I believe that things will no longer be as easygoing as they are now." "Don't jinx it." Erica, who was currently reading a scroll containing the history of the fractured heaven, exclaimed. "Can't we just enjoy the peace while it lasts?" 13 and Sherry shared a knowing glance before nodding their heads at the same time. Erica was right. They should enjoy this moment of peace while it still lasts. "So have you read anything interesting in those scrolls?" 13 asked. "I did," Erica replied. "If these scrolls are to be believed, then the fractured heaven is sealed off from the outside world due to a wall that spanned for miles on end." "What is on the other side of the wall?" Sherry asked. "Who made the seal, and why was the fractured heaven sealed away?" According to this, the fractured heaven was once part of a vast land, which was called the Absolute Heavens, Erica answered. Since it was a cut-off from that piece of heaven, the locals started calling this place the Fractured Heaven. Sherry nodded. "Now the name makes sense." "I know, right?" Erica smirked. "Now, let's get back to the question you asked earlier. What is on the other side of the wall?" According to the records, monsters that didn't come from this world started pouring en masse into the Absolute Heaven. So as a last-ditch effort to save the inhabitant from extinction, a great wall was erected by the old god, protecting a tenth of the citizens of Absolute Heaven. Sherry's eyes widened in shock. "Only a tenth? That's what the records say." Erica nodded. "If I am translating this properly, I think it's safe to say that the monsters that didn't come from this world are the jinns. What do you think, Zion? Am I right?" "Mayhaps," 13 replied as he continued to carve the piece of wood in his hands. "It can be other races too." "What other races are there except for the jinns?" Erica inquired. "Well, I have fought against the Artemians before, you know." 13 replied. "They are moon people, so the possibility of other monsters aside from the jinns invading the Absolute Heaven is there. Of course, I'm leaning more in your guess that the monsters on the other side of the wall are jinns. My only question is whether those jinns are still on the other side of the wall or not." Sherry suddenly thought of something, which made her body shudder uncontrollably. "Don't tell me. Our mission is to defeat the monsters on the other side of the wall," Sherry said anxiously. Erica frowned because Sherry's idea might become a reality. "Well, I hope that we won't have to do that," Erica commented. "Just thinking of fighting hordes of jinns is enough to give me nightmares." Although Erica was now powerful in her own right, she was still not too keen on facing hundreds of monsters at the same time. 13, on the other hand, remained silent because he knew that overthinking things would not do them any good. Just wait until we get our second mission, 13 stated. Don't scare yourselves silly. But what if it does happen? Sherry asked. What if we are forced to go to the other side of the wall and defeat the monsters there? Then we do it. 13 shrugged. Since that is the only way for us to go home, we will just have to do everything in our power to complete our next mission. You make it sound easy, Zion. Erica gave the teenage boy a thumbs up. I approve. Meanwhile, Drazit, who overheard what the three teenagers were talking about, frowned. Many of their people had tried to enter the one-way portal to see what was on the other side of it. They believed that even though it might take a long time, some of them would eventually return to their homeland and inform everyone about what they saw on the other side. But none of these lizard men returned, which made the great chieftain decide to no longer send their people to the stronghold of Wenpolis. Truth be told, Drazit was thinking of accompanying Zion and the others, wanting to see what lay on the other side of the portal. Although he was feeling a bit anxious about the idea that he might not be able to return to his tribe, the temptation of finding the truth was making him reconsider. Since he had already assigned a vice chieftain, who would govern while he was away, it really didn't matter whether he left the Varesti tribe or not. I'll cross the bridge when I get there, Drazit thought. However, although he tried hard to deny it, he had already made his decision. 2 days later, the Wenpolis stronghold finally appeared in their sight, making the wanderers sigh in relief. However, before they could even do anything, they heard a notification sound inside their heads, making them check their status page at the same time. Like everyone else, 13 also looked at his status page and skimmed through the contents of their first mission. Trial of Courage, Part 1. This mission is a chain quest. In order to clear it, you will need to clear 3 missions first. Find the stronghold of Wenpolis located on the west of the land called Fractured Heaven, and overthrow the tyrant ruling it. Time limit: none. Note, you have already arrived at your destination. All you need to do now is defeat the tyrant that had taken over the stronghold. After you defeat the tyrant, you will need to enter the one-way portal to continue your next mission. Defeat the tyrant. Huh. I almost forgot about this part, Erica commented. I wonder how strong that tyrant is. 13 also wondered about the exact same thing, but he temporarily brushed it aside. He took the small red flag at the side of his wagon and raised it high in the air. Captains, assemble, the wanderer shouted after seeing the flag in 13's hand, passing the message behind the red flag across the entire caravan. The teenage boy had taught the wanderers various means of communication, and one of them was waving flags of different colors to inform everyone what they needed to do. The red flag meant that there would be an emergency meeting among all the captains within their group. A few minutes later, all the captains gathered in front of 13 and were waiting for him to start the meeting. Our destination is within our sights, but the last hurdle remains, 13 said. As you may already know, we need to first defeat the tyrant that is inside the stronghold before we can enter the one-way portal safely. For the time being, all of you will stay here and rest, while I scout ahead to check the current situation. If the tyrant isn't as strong as I was expecting, I will move in to eliminate it alongside Erica and the other apostles. They will also come with me on this scouting mission, and all of you will stay here and wait for our return. The captains nodded in understanding, but not long after, there was one captain who raised his hand, the sight of which made 13 smile. Yes, Sean. 13 asked. I want to go as well, Sean replied. Please give me permission to accompany you, Commander. 13 eyed the sign of the Signy faction before nodding his head. Very well. You may come with me. Feel free to bring Heidi with you. However, only the 2 of you can accompany us in this scouting mission. Thank you. Sean smiled. 13 then shifted his attention to Erica and David, who were also waiting for his orders. Gather the apostles, and prepare to depart in 15 minutes, 13 ordered. The rest of the captains will inform everyone that we are on level 3 alert. Stay in your positions, and be on guard. If something unexpected happens inside the Wenpolis stronghold, I want everyone to mobilize the moment they see the signal. Yes, sir. After giving out a series of orders, the various commanders made their move and hurried back to their own respective squads to tell them about the contents of the meeting. 15 minutes later, the scouting party departed the caravan in order to check the level of danger inside the Wenpolis stronghold. Drazit decided to accompany Zion and the others, so before leaving, he ordered his subordinates to keep watch and protect the humans while he was away. Since the lizard men had abandoned the stronghold, it was highly possible that a monster had taken over it during the past few years. 13's team was composed of 20 people, including Drazit. Their group could be considered a sizable fighting force and could handle a rank 6 sovereign as long as they all worked together. Before they entered the stronghold, 13 had already sent Rocky to investigate. But according to his report, aside from a few rank 2 and rank 3 monsters inside the stronghold, he didn't sense any strong monsters inside of it. Even so, the Rocky Balboa remained on standby just in case something unexpected happened. The moment 13's group reached their destination, the teenage boy immediately ordered the apostles to cripple the monsters in the surroundings but not kill them. He planned to let Sherry, Sean, and Heidi land the killing blow since they would benefit from killing rank 2 and rank 3 monsters the most. The majority of the monsters inside the stronghold were spiders of different sizes. The rank 3 spiders were as big as cars, while the rank 2 spiders were as big as motorcycles. There were dozens of them inside the stronghold, but with Drazit, Erica, and the other apostles around, all the other monsters were easily kept at bay, while Sherry, Sean, and Heidi went for the kill. "Don't let your guard down," 13 said as he observed the surroundings. "Prepare for any unexpected event that might happen." 13 tightened his grip on his bow and lightly pulled back the knocked arrow as he eyed the surroundings like a hawk. Tiona was also slithering around, checking the surroundings for any monsters who might launch a sneak attack in their direction. Nearly half an hour later, 13's team had managed to kill all the spiders in the immediate surroundings. Gathering once again, 13 asked everyone to accompany him to do a sweep of the stronghold and eliminate all the threats inside of it. Only after he was certain that there were no more signs of danger would he let the other wanderers enter the stronghold. An hour later, they finally arrived at the one-way portal, which was as big as an entire house. It was located at the northern corner of the stronghold, guarded by 6 rank 3 monsters, which was easily defeated by 13's party. 13 approached the one-way portal and thoroughly inspected it. After seeing that there was nothing wrong with it, he looked at his teammates and started to give out a series of orders. "Only the western area is left," 13 said. "After we clear that part, we will divide into 2 teams and do one last sweep of the stronghold. There's a possibility that some of the monsters escaped, so we will do a pincer sweep to ensure that we eliminate those remaining monsters." As 13 was busy talking, somewhere inside the stronghold, 8 gray eyes opened at the same time. It had sensed that several creatures had infiltrated its domain and killed a huge number of its subordinates. But just as it was about to move, it noticed a black snake looking up at it from the ground. The spider, who had a camouflage ability, casually swiped at the black snake with its razor-sharp legs, splitting it in half. With its death, the black snake erupted into a purple blood mist, but the spider jumped away from it and landed nimbly on the ground. Despite its size, it was able to move quickly and land like it only weighed a feather. It once again activated its stealth ability and started looking for the perfect place to set up an ambush so that the intruders, who had entered its domain, would not be leaving it alive. While 13 was busy clearing out the Wenpolis stronghold, Kamazots and Camerasipo were chatting with Metatron. "That is a mean trick you pulled over our boy, 13, Kamazots said in disappointment. "Although you said that you will allow him to capture monsters, you just have to set that very hard condition." "Very hard condition?" Metatron arched an eyebrow. "What do you mean, very hard condition?" "You know what I'm talking about," Kamazots replied. "You set a condition that he can only capture monsters he defeated with only Tiona and his schemes. If he defeats the monster with the help of his parade of 100 demons, then it won't count." "Just what kind of bullshit is that?" "It's part of his strength, so why are you not allowing him to use it?" "I have my reasons," Metatron answered. "But you look down on 13 so much. Even without it, I'm sure that the boy can come up with something. Unlike you, he is a very smart person." Camazotz snorted because Metatron indirectly said that he wasn't smart like Zion. Of course, the Deathbat had already known and acknowledged this fact, but that wasn't even the issue right now. He wanted 13 to become strong so that their trinity would be the strongest faction in the Order of the Apocalypse. There were currently 4 factions within the Order, and their trinity was the latest faction formed. Camarasipa was their strongest and most influential member. Even the other members of the Order of the Apocalypse would often approach her for favors due to her power as a seer and an oracle. All the 3 other factions had tried inviting her to their faction, but she declined each time. This was why when Camarasipa decided to team up with Kamataz and 13, the other members of the Apocalypse thought that she was just playing around with the 2 weakest members of their organization. Still, you should at least let him use the divine artifact, Camazotz insisted. Am I right, Camarasipa? But to his surprise, the Mage and Princess of Prophecy didn't side with him this time. I agree with Metatron on this one, Camarasipa said. Knowing 13, he will just force himself to fight an opponent stronger than him again. He only got lucky this time because his subordinates are able to fend off the Goblin army, preventing them from helping their emperor. But if even one of them had managed to get past their defenses, 13 would have been in danger because he put all of his attention into fighting the Goblin emperor. He doesn't have enough leeway to deal with unexpected variables. Metatron nodded. As expected, smart people get it easily. Camazotz blinked once then twice before glaring at the traitor, who didn't side with him. Don't worry, Camazotz. Camarasipa smiled faintly. 13 will be able to do it. He's someone who will go above and beyond to achieve his goals. What makes you think that he is not capable of defeating a rank 8 sovereign with only his wits? Did you perhaps forget that he is the one who defeated Arundel? Back then, he didn't have the parade of 100 demons. All he needs is time and a strategy. As long as these conditions are met, it's not impossible to defeat a rank 8 monster and above. Camazotz couldn't refute the Magian Princess's words because 13 wouldn't have become a member of the Order if he didn't defeat one of its members. Since the teenage boy had managed to do it when he was still 7 years old, what was stopping him from doing the same thing now that he was stronger and older? For now, you should focus on yourself, Camazotz, Metatron chided. Although 13 is the weakest member of the Order of the Apocalypse right now, you are the second weakest member. Ha ha ha, that is old news, Metatron. Camazotz chuckled. In the past, I was indeed the weakest. But now, HMPH, you can pick any member of the Order except Camarasipa and Beelzebub, and I can beat the crap out of them hands down. You're only confident now because you have that armor that you got from the Artemians. Metatron commented. Without it, you're just a stupid deathbat. But I have it. Camazotz smirked. And since I have it, do you think I'm still the old deathbat second only to Arundel? You should change the rankings, Metatron. Right now, I'm the 3rd strongest member of our organization. Camarasipa opened her fan and covered her lips. If she didn't, she might not be able to stop herself from laughing out loud. She agreed that without the armor, Camazotz was their 2nd weakest member. But since he had it, he was no longer someone who could easily be defeated. The Deathbat had even subdued his neighbors and made them subservient to him, expanding his domain after he returned from helping 13 in the Arcadia archipelago. Relying on external things doesn't make someone stronger. Camazotz, Metatron said with a smile. You should take 13 as your role model. He is a very interesting character. Did you forget that he also asked for external help against the Artemians? Camazotz replied. I and Camarasipa went out of our way to help his sorry bum back then. Or did you forget it? You using external help and 13 using external help are 2 different things, Camazotz. Double standards much. The discrimination is real. It is indeed discrimination. But what can you do about it? You want to fight? Bring it on. This time, Camarasipa wasn't able to stop the giggle that escaped her lips after she heard the banter between Metatron and Camazotz. Clearly, Metatron was giving 13 special treatment and rubbing it on Camazotz's face. Simply put, the god of the Order of the Apocalypse had more faith in the teenage boy than the Deathbat, who was notorious for bullying the weak and fearing the strong. Still, I can't wait until 13 becomes a bit stronger, Camerasipa thought. It might take some time, but with him as our leader, I'm sure that things will get more interesting in the future. The Maiden Princess of Prophecy then glanced at the projection that showed 13 walking in the direction where Tiona's clone was killed and preparing himself for battle. After Tiona's clone died, Tiona immediately reported to her master what her clone discovered. Knowing about the strong monster, the teenage boy immediately recalled the second group, which was supposed to do a sweep of the Stronghold in the western regions. What's wrong? David, who was leading the second group, asked. Did something happen? Something came up, 13 replied. The monster guarding this place is a rank 6 sovereign. It's a chameleon spider that can meld with its surroundings, making it invisible to the eyes. We can't afford to divide ourselves into 2 groups because that makes it easier for it to ambush us. Sticking together is our best option right now. When David heard the name of the monster, his face immediately turned pale. In his past mission, he and his comrades happened to encounter a chameleon spider, and it nearly wiped out all of them. It was a very sly and cautious monster, striking only when it was certain of its victory. Because of its intelligence, its threat level was higher compared to other monsters of the same rank. How did you know that there's a chameleon spider in this stronghold? David inquired. Where did you get this information? Tiona told me, 13 replied. She's very sensitive to the scent of monsters, and it just so happens that she had encountered a chameleon spider in the past. The black snake nodded her head in confirmation. Her master was technically not lying. Her clone had encountered the chameleon spider, even dying because of it. Since her clone was a part of her, it meant that she had also encountered the monster as well. Although it hadn't been long since then, it was still considered in the past. Everyone glanced at the Domini Mortis coiled around Zion's neck. There was very little information about this extremely rare monster, so David couldn't refute the possibility of it having superior detection abilities. What do we do now? Erica asked. I've heard about the chameleon spider, and it's a very nasty opponent. People who encounter it die without knowing how they died. Exactly. David nodded. That monster is a real threat. Maybe we should retreat for now, and come up with a strategy after we regroup with the others. You're right, 13 said. Let's go back for now. Everyone sighed in relief. They initially feared the possibility that Zion would be stubborn and ask them to fight the chameleon spider together with him. What the other wanderers didn't know was that Tiona's clone had once again spawned, and it was now monitoring the movement of the one who killed it from under the ground. Rocky moved underground, following Zion and making sure to protect its master just in case the spider sneak attacked. Only after the wanderers had safely left the stronghold did they manage to breathe a sigh of relief. All of you stay here, 13 said. I'll ask Commander Drazit to accompany me in the stronghold to check if there is really a camouflage spider. David and the others wanted to persuade him not to go, but since a rank 5 sovereign like Drazit was coming with him, they felt that Zion would be able to escape as long as the Lizardman commander was there. I'm coming with you, Erica said. I'll go as well, Sherry stated. The two had even prepared what they'd say to persuade Zion if he rejected them, so they were pleasantly surprised when the teenage boy nodded and agreed to take them with him. Okay, but I will not bring anyone else aside from the two of you, 13 replied. Adding more might just make things more complicated and prevent us from escaping. On the side, Drazit turned to his subordinates. All of you should stay on alert, the lizard commander ordered his subordinates. Even if we are a mile away from the stronghold, that doesn't mean that the camouflage spider will not take the initiative to attack our camp. All the lizard men nodded their heads in understanding and promised that they would stay alert while waiting for their commander's return. Once the head figures were finished giving instructions to their subordinates, 13's team of 4 once again traveled toward the stronghold. The moment their group stepped foot into the stronghold, 13 didn't bat an eye and asked Rocky to bring out T1 up to T5. Seeing the 5 monsters suddenly appear, Erica, Sherry, and Drazit understood that 13 meant serious business. Will Giga, Blackie, Hercules, and Rocky not help us? Erica asked. We can't always rely on them to fight our battles for us, 13 answered. T1 and the rest is more than enough to assist us in this battle. T1 was a rank 5 sovereign troll warlord, while the other trolls were rank 4 alpha monsters. There were 2 troll raiders and 2 troll shamans, so their group composition was balanced. Sherry also summoned Moss. Although there were already strong monsters in their party, she was simply used to fighting alongside her Blade Panther. Erica, on the other hand, wore the monocle that Zion had given her. Not only did it allow her to lock in on monsters from a distance, but it also amplified some of her abilities, including her thermal vision. Even if something were invisible, as long as their body was emitting heat, she would be able to detect them with the help of the monocle. When he saw the young lady wearing the monocle he crafted and gifted to her, a faint smile appeared on his lips. He was glad to see that Erica was quick to use it in this situation. "Follow me," 13 said, and then led his team to where the spider was hiding. Earlier, the camouflage spider was planning to ambush 13's group as they made their rounds inside the stronghold. Unfortunately, they left, and the spider even thought that they had given up. So when it sensed that there were suddenly 10 creatures inside the stronghold, it became extremely cautious. The reason why it became conscious was due to the fact that 6 out of those 10 creatures were strong. Although it was still stronger than them, it understood that it couldn't act rashly. It planned to observe the newcomers from a safe distance. But when it sensed that they were headed in its direction, the spider was forced to make a decision. Wait in ambush or retreat. After careful consideration, it decided to wait and ambush the invaders. It was confident that as long as the enemy came within its striking range, it could eliminate 1 or 2 of them before making its escape. Once the instances are met, it would then use sneak attacks to whittle down the enemy's numbers until only a few of them were left. By then, the spider no longer needed to fear anything because it could simply overpower its foes with speed and power. But just as it was having this thought, it heard whistling sounds in the air. A moment later, the spider jumped off from its hiding place just in time to dodge 3 adamantium arrows that pierced the wall where it had been waiting earlier. However, although it managed to dodge the arrows, it didn't manage to evade the fireball that landed perfectly on the spot it had jumped to. It was as if its caster predicted exactly where the spider was going to land. Although it was hit by one of Erica's strongest attacks, the monster only suffered minor burns, which it easily shrugged off. But before it could even return to hiding, 3 trolls and the Lizardman commander charged in its direction with their weapons poised to strike. The camouflage spider glanced in their direction once before running away in haste. It was still shaken because it didn't understand why it was attacked even though it was perfectly hidden from plain sight. Until it discovered how its trump card was seen through, the spider decided that fighting wasn't the best option at the moment. 13, who saw the spider running away, couldn't help but sneer. "You can run, but you can't hide," 13 muttered before giving the signal to Erica, Sherry, and the 2 troll warlords to follow him. The camouflage spider had grown to its current rank by preying on the weak. Because of this, it wasn't prepared to be hunted down by a group of monsters who now treated it as their prey. The camouflage spider was starting to lose its mind. No matter how hard it tried to run away and no matter how much it tried to hide, the invaders seemed to always know where exactly it hid. At first, it thought that the enemy just got lucky in guessing its location. But after numerous coincidences, things were different. Knowing that its stealth abilities did not affect its opponents, the spider was forced to engage the invaders with other guerrilla tactics. In the end, it was still a rank 6 sovereign, and with its superior agility and fighting style, it wasn't at all an easy opponent to defeat. The camouflage spider was capable of not only spinning webs, but spitting acid as well. It was fast and deadly, not to mention currently desperate, which was a very lethal combination. 13 and Erica attacked it from a distance, with the teenage boy predicting where it would go. For some reason, the spider would rather accept Erica's fireball attacks than let one of 13's adamantine arrows pierce its body. It must have deemed the arrows more dangerous than the sorceress fireballs, which overall had dealt considerable damage to its body. Sherry, who was also using her bow and arrows, was unable to land a single hit. The 2 troll shamans weren't casting any offensive spells. However, they were prepared to cast a barrier just in case the giant spider decided to attack the humans under their protection. After half an hour, a change emerged from the spider's body. It no longer melded with its surroundings, and its body's color turned blood red. It has activated its bloodlust ability, 13 shouted. Be careful. It will now seriously go on the offensive. As if waiting for that signal, the giant spider lunged at Drazit and the three trolls with an ear-piercing screech. Sensing that it would be dangerous to confront it head-on, Drazit hastily backed away while raising his round shield to protect itself from the spider's deadly strike. One of the spider's razor-sharp legs collided with Drazit's shield, sending the lizard man flying toward the wall of the stronghold. A loud crash spread in the surroundings as Drazit broke the wall with its body, making the lizard man cough out blood. Careful, it's stronger now, T1 exclaimed as the two troll raiders sent their axes flying at the giant spider. Although it was in a state of bloodlust, its senses were heightened to the fullest, allowing the spider to deflect the throwing axes with its front legs. A second later, a fireball collided with the side of its body, making it skid several meters away from where it stood. Flames licked the spider's body, while white smoke rose from the point of impact. It then shifted its attention to the annoying sorceress, who had been hitting it repeatedly with fireballs since the very start. Since it was in a berserk state, it no longer hesitated and lunged in Erika's direction with the intention of ending her life. The sorceress didn't back down and launched a barrage of magic bullets at the approaching monster. Blood mist erupted from the spider's body as Erika's spells hit their mark. However, those attacks weren't enough to deter the monster from its plan to kill the hateful human in front of it. Just as its razor-sharp legs were about to slice her in half, Erika's body was pulled away by an invisible force, making the spider's attack miss. The two troll shamans, who were waiting in ambush, used telekinesis to throw boulders at the giant spider from both sides, making it stagger. However, a few seconds later, it jumped back and once again evaded two adamantine arrows that pierced the ground where it originally stood earlier. This monster sure is something, 13 said with a smile. Maybe its spider sense is tingling every time I attack. That's the only explanation I can think of as to why it doesn't want to get hit by my arrows. Tiona nodded her head in agreement as she and her clone helped Erika land safely on the ground. Drazit and the three trolls finally recovered and engaged the spider in close combat. Although they were strong in their own rights, they were still pushed away by the spider's frenzied attack. 13 observed the situation calmly and once again aimed an arrow at the monster. He knew that the spider couldn't stay in its bloodlust state for very long. The moment its berserk skill was overdue, its strength and speed would decline to half its original strength, allowing them to eliminate it with their current lineup. In short, he decided to fight a battle of attrition. He wanted Erika, Sherry, and the trolls to gain as much combat experience as possible when fighting against powerful opponents. As the battle dragged on, T1, who was wielding two axes in each hand, was starting to get used to the spider's attack patterns, allowing him to dodge and counterattack when needed. Drazit had also learned to parry and block the monster's attacks without losing his ground. The two troll raiders used spear thrusts against the frenzied spider because they understood that it was stronger and faster than they were. They needed a bit of range in order to get past its defenses, so their weapons proved to be useful in this battle. On the other hand, Erika was casting magic bullets because she now had better control over it. This also prevented friendly fire, which would be lethal in their current situation. Sherry could only bite her lips as she watched the battle unfold before her eyes. Since she wasn't as confident in her aim, she decided to not shoot any arrows lest she accidentally hit her allies. 13, on the other hand, was different. Since he was confident in his archery, he never stopped firing one arrow after the other at the spider, who kept on dodging his attacks. The teenage boy wasn't too disappointed with this situation because each time the spider dodged his attack, the trolls would manage to land a hit on its body, which was a good trade-off. Simply put, whenever he shot arrows at the monster, it destroyed the camouflage spider stance, preventing it from unleashing a deadly attack at his allies. Perhaps knowing that its maddened state was about to disperse, the giant spider made one last desperate effort to target the teenage boy, whom it had instinctively labeled as the greatest threat in this battle. Unfortunately, it made the wrong choice. The moment it lunged at Zion, Giga suddenly appeared in front of the young man, and Giga punched the hateful spider, sending it flying backward. The moment its body hit the wall, the redness of its body disappeared, replaced by a gray color. Its bloodlust state had finally dispersed, and it was now undergoing the backlash of its own attack. With the opportunity right in front of them, Drazit and the trolls cut off its legs, preventing it from running away. As a finishing blow, Giga jumped and body slammed its body, pinning it on the ground. 13 didn't ask the Blaze Skunk to participate in the battle. However, Giga would not allow 13's life to be threatened a second time, especially after seeing the young man's comatose state after fighting the Goblin Emperor. "Finish it, Erica," 13 said. The sorceress then raised her staff and chanted a spell to summon a giant flaming spee. This was her ultimate skill, which she called Hellfire Spee. The only reason she didn't use it during the battle was due to the fact that it took nearly half a minute to complete the chant, which was not only inefficient and difficult to do but also dangerous in a high-intensity battle. Since its body had weakened considerably after its maddened state had passed, the flaming spee pierced through the spider's head without much resistance, ending the monster's life. After much struggle, the Tyrant of the Stronghold had been defeated. Suddenly, all the Wanderers received a notification informing them that their first mission was completed, making them all cheer because they were finally one step closer to completing their mission. "Ooh, I hate spiders," Erica said with a complicated look on her face as she summoned her new avatar, which was a rank 6 camouflage spider. Although she said she hated spiders, 13 knew that the sorceress was actually happy. Regardless of what form it was, the important part was that she now had a rank 6 sovereign as an avatar. It was a very powerful monster, and unless Erica were to fight rank 7 alpha monsters and above, she would be just fine. Sherry also didn't like spiders, so she couldn't help but stick close to Zion. She felt anxious just at the sight of the giant spider. Although she knew that it was Erica's avatar, and on their side, she just couldn't find the courage to go anywhere near it. While Erica was communicating with her newest avatar, T1 approached 13 and handed him the rank 6 beast core, which belonged to the monster they had just defeated. The blood-red core, which was the size of a basketball, glowed ominously in the troll's hands. 13 didn't bat an eye and held it in his hands before glancing at Sherry. He planned to give the rank 6 core to his right-hand girl, but he understood that Sherry wasn't strong enough to absorb such a beast core. With this in mind, he planned to ask Metatron for help in order to downgrade the crystal to that of a rank 5 sovereign before letting Sherry absorb it. If she absorbed a beast core that came from the powerful monster, she would inherit the camouflage spider's speed and agility. Not only that, but she would also gain one of its abilities, any of which was a very useful skill to possess. So for the time being, he stored the beast core inside his dimensional storage. "Thank you, everyone, for your help," 13 said to his monster friends and gave them a thumbs up. "Please return to the mobile fortress. The other Wanderers will be here soon." Rocky then appeared and swallowed Giga and the rest before burrowing deep underground. Since Drazit, Erica, and Sherry already knew about his monster army, he no longer had to worry about them spreading this information to others. Tiona, on the other hand, moved toward the dead spider and began to eat some of its flesh. Tiona had the predation ability, which allowed her to learn an ability from eating monster parts like their flesh and beast cores. He had tried to use this ability on the rest of the monsters in his parade of 100 demons, but they were unable to learn any skills aside from the skills that they originally possessed, as well as the 99 other skills that were recorded in the divine artifact. Although he was disappointed that he couldn't further maximize the predation skill, he was still happy that Tiona and her clone would still be able to grow stronger together. A while later, the Black Snake returned looking very happy. 13 opened Tiona's page and saw that she learned the skill, Sticky Web, which was one of the skills that the camouflage spider possessed. Several minutes later, they heard the rumbling sounds of several monsters running in their direction. "It seems that they're already here," 13 said. "They probably thought that it's already safe since the first mission is already completed," Sherry commented. "That's indeed the case." Erica nodded in agreement. Drazit, who was standing beside 13, hesitated for a bit before lightly tapping the teenage boy's shoulder. "Can we talk?" Drazit asked. "Sure," 13 replied. "What do you want to talk about?" "I'm very curious about what lay on the other side of this portal," Drazit answered. "Can I come with you guys?" Fatin didn't reply right away and instead stayed intently at the lizardman's eyes, which had a determined glint in them. You might not be able to return back to your tribe if you do, 13 said. Are you sure about this? Drazit nodded yes. I've thought long and hard about it, and this is my decision. Fatin pondered a bit before nodding in understanding. Very well, but you will have to take care of your own safety, okay? I will not babysit you. The lizard man commander laughed after hearing the human boy's words. As a very powerful warrior, he wanted to say that he didn't need Zion to worry about him because he could take care of himself. However, since he didn't know whether he would need the teenage boy's help or not, he just laughed and didn't say anything else. Several minutes later, 13 and the apostles did one final sweep of the stronghold and managed to kill 7 more spiders, who were doing their best to hide. There were rank 2 and rank 3 monsters, so killing them wasn't difficult. When he deemed that the stronghold was safe to occupy, 13 told everyone that they would rest for a day before entering the one-way portal. Since no one knew what was waiting for them on the other side, he decided to let everyone take a full night's rest, so they would have the energy to face whatever challenges they might find after entering the portal. Drazit also told his men about his decision, which made some of his subordinates wish to accompany him. However, Drazit politely but firmly declined their proposal and said that the Voresti tribe would need capable warriors like them to keep them safe. Sherrick was also saddened by this news, but there was nothing he could do about it. 13 had already asked Gwen to remove its control over the lizard men because it was no longer needed. Sherrick had already recognized Zion as their tribe's benefactor, so he was no longer hostile to the humans under his command. While everyone was setting up camp before their eventual departure the next day, 13 left after telling Erica and Sherry that he would be taking a stroll. The two girls exchanged a knowing glance with each other before nodding their heads at the same time. Be careful, Erica said. I'll leave some dinner for you, Sherry stated. Thanks, 13 replied before sneaking somewhere inside the stronghold. As soon as he was certain that no one was tailing him, he asked Rocky to take him inside the mobile fortress. After entering the mobile fortress, he activated his Ring of the Apocalypse, planning to talk to Metatron. He wanted to deal with the issue of the Beast Core as early as possible and allow Sherry to absorb it. While everyone was doing whatever they wanted, Elyon looked at the one-way portal with a solemn expression on his face. For a brief moment, the thought of entering it first crossed his mind. But as someone with great ambitions, he knew that doing something so reckless might endanger his life. So for the time being, he decided to imitate Sean and Heidi, who seemed to have gained a little bit of Zion's trust. His two friends had accompanied 13 in his special raids, which allowed the two of them to not only gain experience but also receive some items as rewards. Since he was stuck with the Siny faction for the time being, he thought that it would be best if he could gain some benefits for himself. Maybe I should try to poach that girl, Sherry, to my side, Elyon thought. Since I'm a member of a prestigious family, I should be able to give her an offer that she can't refuse. Elyon pondered for a bit as a smile appeared on his face. But whether he would be able to poach the young lady's loyalty or not would depend on whether Sherry found him more dependable than her boss, who was now currently negotiating with the god of the apocalypse for her sake. Excuse me, Miss Sherry, can I have some of your time? Elyon asked as he approached the young lady who was roasting some meat over a bonfire. After he saw 13 leave the camp, he noticed that Erica went to talk to the other apostles, leaving the teenage girl alone. Since this was a rare opportunity, Elyon decided to approach Sherry while the nuisance was away. What can I do for you, Mr. Elyon? Sherry asked. She did her best to keep herself from frowning. The teenage boy in front of her had been giving her some bad vibes ever since she first met him. I just want to say that I admired Miss Sherry's management of the Wanderers when we first arrived here in Solterra, Elyon said. If possible, I'd like to become friends. Is that possible? The young lady did her best to keep her lips from twitching. Clearly, she didn't like Elyon. Becoming his friend was the last thing she wanted to happen. However, she knew that if she rejected him directly, things might get complicated, not only in Solterra but in Pangea as well. Her parents were the leaders of a mercenary group, which was based on the Siny continent. Due to the upcoming Jinn invasion, they decided to stay and defend their homeland, just like everyone else who lived in the Siny continent. If she were to get on the wrong side of one of the scions of the families that ruled the Siny continent, things might get difficult for her and her family. May I know what being a friend of Mr. Elyon entails? Sherry asked. You're making it sound like this is a business transaction, Miss Sherry, Elyon replied. I just want to form a connection with you to increase my chances of surviving here in Solterra. To begin with, Mr. Elyon is more talented than me, so your chances of survival are higher than mine, Sherry said. I am only able to survive because of Boss Zion. If not for him, I might already be dead by now. You underestimate yourself too much, Miss Sherry. Elyon shook his head. While I do admit that Zion is very capable, he can't always be there to protect us all. When he's not here, we have no choice but to fend for ourselves. Isn't that right, Miss Sherry? The young man said the words playfully, but Sherry was someone who could read between the lines. Elyon was implying that Zion wouldn't always be there to protect her, and if that were to happen, she would be left to fend for herself. It was a subtle threat, and one that she needed to take seriously since Elyon was a member of the Gates family, which was one of the 10 prestigious families of Pangea. Just as Sherry was desperately thinking of what to say or do, a chuckle reached her ears. Elyon heard it too, so he turned around, only to see the person he didn't want to see in this kind of situation. It seems that Mr. Elyon here thinks that he has the authority to make the Gates family move, 13 said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Hey, are you actually threatening my vice captain to become your friend if she doesn't want to suffer the consequences of her refusal? Of course not, Elyon replied, returning Zion's smile. I was just telling her that I want to be friends, so we can help each other to complete this mission. 13 nodded. I see, but I don't want you to be friends with her. What can you do about it? I don't understand why this is an issue. Elyon frowned. I just want to be friends with her. Besides, I am not your subordinate, so I can do whatever I want to do. 13 laughed and nodded his head. You're right. You're not my subordinate, 13 said as he lightly patted Elyon's shoulder. But remember this, soon, you will be begging to become my subordinate. Elyon swatted the young man's hand from his shoulder. In your dreams. After saying those words, he glanced back at the young lady and bid her farewell. Your talent can only be recognized by people who know your value, Miss Sherry, Elyon stated. If you change your mind, don't hesitate to look for me. The scion of the Gates family then walked away without giving 13 a second glance. Since he had already made his point, staying was no longer an option. He just hoped that his words had an impact on the young lady, whose family's livelihood depended on the mercy of the prestigious families in the Siny continent. Sherry, let's take a stroll for a bit, 13 said. Okay, Sherry replied. She would be lying if she said that she didn't feel anxious about Elyon's subtle threat. However, she was still glad that Zion interrupted their discussion, so she didn't have to answer Elyon's question of whether she wanted to become his friend or not. Since Zion had already said that he didn't want her to become friends with the scion of the Gates family, she decided to use that as an excuse the next time the scion approached her again. When the two of them entered one of the empty rooms within the Stronghold, Rocky appeared to swallow both of them whole. After seeing the familiar scenery, Sherry was able to calm down because she knew that she was in a safe place. You don't have to worry about Elyon, 13 said. He's just one of the many scions of the prestigious families. It's a wonder what made him think he can do whatever he wants just because he was born with a golden spoon in his hand. One word from me, and he would find himself disowned by his family in Pangea. The Griffin clan and the patriarchs of the Gates, Bishop, and Lotta families will not bat an eye to make him understand that he isn't as important as my pinky finger. If you're still worried, you and your family can relocate to the Aldebaran continent. You don't have to worry about him ever again. Also, if you still feel insecure, I can always feed him to Giga. The Blaze skunk hugged 13 from behind and lightly growled, telling 13 that he didn't like to eat trash, which made the teenage boy smirk. I'm sorry. 13 lightly rubbed Giga's right cheek. I'll just feed him to Blackie then. Sherry giggled. From her point of view, the young man's interaction with his monster friends looked quite endearing. Thank you, boss, Sherry said after she regained her composure. I'll be more confident when he talks to me next time. As you should. 13 nodded. If he annoys you once more, we can always make him disappear. After all, accidents happen in Solterra. The teenage boy and the blaze skunk both grinned like third-rate villains, which almost made Sherry giggle for a second time. She didn't realize that the anxiety in her heart had already disappeared and was replaced with a very warm feeling of being protected by someone whom she could depend on. "Oh, I almost forgot the real reason why I asked you to come with me," 13 said before taking out the blood-red core that had been downgraded by Metatron. Sherry looked at the familiar-looking beast core and looked at the young man in confusion. "Absorb this," 13 ordered. "This is from that rank 6 sovereign camouflage spider. However, I tinkered with it a bit, so now it's only a rank 5 sovereign beast core. Don't worry, you can absorb it safely. I guarantee that you won't implode afterward." Sherry blinked once then twice before reality dawned upon her. Ever since she arrived in Solterra, 13 forbade her from absorbing any beast cores using the reason that he would find her a rank 5 beast core to absorb. Back then, she thought that the teenage boy was just joking. It just so happened that her parents also told her that she should absorb a high-ranking beast core during her first wandering, so she conveniently obeyed the young man. Those who were able to get lucky and actually absorb a rank 5 beast core before becoming rookies would have an advantage over those who weren't able to do so. They would become significantly stronger than their peers and also gain abilities that would grow with them as they increase their rank. "Hey, are you sure about this?" Sherry asked. "Can I really take it?" "Of course, you can," 13 replied. "Tomorrow we will depart to whatever lay on the other side of the one-way portal. I need you to be strong enough to support me when that happens." Sherry slowly raised her hand and accepted the beast core with teary eyes. "Thank you, boss," Sherry said, doing her best to control her emotions. "I'll do my best to support you." 13 nodded. "You're welcome." He then watched as the young lady absorbed the beast core, which would grant her new abilities that would change her life forever. The moment Sherry absorbed the blood-red beast core, a surge of warmth washed over her body. It felt so good that a sigh escaped her lips. She felt like she was taking a refreshing bath after walking in the hot desert for a day. With eyes closed, she could feel every fiber of her being revitalized. A few seconds later, she fell into a daze as her body gradually adapted to the new strength that the beast core was bestowing her. In order to become a rookie, one needed to collect 200 rank 1 cores, or something equivalent to it. A rank 1 core gave 1 point. A rank 2 core gave 5 points. A rank 3 core gave 10 points. A rank 4 core gave 100 points. Last, but not the least, a rank 5 core gave 500 points. The disparity in ranks was different for rank 4 and rank 5 monsters. In order to secure a good foundation while one was still a rookie, absorbing the highest rank cores possible was recommended. That said, at least one rank 4 beast core was enough to give one a great advantage. But the benefits a rank 5 beast core gave, especially if it belonged to an alpha or sovereign monster, was significantly much greater. It was not simply 1 + 1 = 2. It was more like 1 + 1 = 100. It broke common sense. But breaking the limits was something wanderers ought to do. Completing hard and sometimes near-impossible missions was their way of survival. Rank 5 was a limit that someone below the rookie rank could absorb. Anything higher would make their bodies implode. This was what made 13 an anomaly. Not only did he absorb the core of a Magian prince, but he also gained Arundel's signature ability, the disintegrator skill. And despite the fact that he was a mere rookie, his strength rivaled that of a master. He was an anomaly that would never appear a second time in the worlds of Pangea and Solterra. After a few minutes of silence, clarity returned in Sherry's eyes. Although her rank didn't change, she felt more powerful than she ever felt in her life. "Congratulations," 13 said with a smile. "Now, all you need to do is survive this chain quest, and you will become one of the prodigies of your current generation." "You're also part of my current generation," Sherry replied in a teasing tone. "Compared to you, I dare not call myself a prodigy." "Well, I'm just built differently," 13 smirked. "Don't compare yourself to me. There's no rookie stronger than me in both worlds." Sherry nodded in agreement. She had already met many rookies in her life, and she was certain that Zion's presence was different from theirs, and he seemed bigger than life itself. "So what skill did you acquire?" 13 asked. Let me check first, Sherry replied before opening her status page. As soon as her gaze landed on the new skills that she gained, her eyes widened in surprise. With a single glance, she noticed that she didn't get just one skill, but 3 skills at once. Silk threads, camouflage, and wall crawling, Sherry said in a daze. I got these 3 skills from the Beast Core. 13 rubbed his chin because this was clearly something that Metatron did beforehand. Just based on the 3 skills Sherry gained, he could already imagine her becoming an assassin. The silk threads were strong and elastic at the same time. They could be used to bind and strangle their targets. The wall crawling was easy to understand because it gave her the ability to walk on walls like a spider. The camouflage was also a no-brainer. With this skill set, it was very obvious that Sherry would become a nimble and stealthy fighter if needed be. Clearly, Metatron went all out to do the teenage boy a favor, as if making sure that he would gain another strong subordinate. Test your skills here, but make sure that you do not ever show it to others unless absolutely necessary, 13 said in a serious tone. Don't hesitate to use it when your life is in danger. A trump card is only good if you are alive and able to use it. Sherry nodded in understanding and began to test her newly acquired skills. It took her a while to get the hang of using her abilities, and with 13's help, her eyes were open to new possibilities on how to use her skills more effectively. For example, she could use throwing knives and attach a silk thread to their handles. This allowed her to retrieve them when needed or spin them around like a deadly lasso. Of course, she would need to train on how to do it properly lest she accidentally hurt herself instead. But since she could enter the mobile fortress with 13's permission, she could train without worrying about people spying on her ability. Ratatoska, who had been watching over the shard of origin inside the mobile fortress, looked at the young lady and decided to spar with her a bit. Since he was stronger than the young lady, he held back his strength by a bit, allowing Sherry to gain some combat experience. 2 hours later, they left the mobile fortress and returned to the outside world, only to find Erica waiting for them in their wagon. The sorceress eyed the girl who always called her auntie and arched an eyebrow after sensing that something was different from her. Did the 2 of you do it? Erica asked in a teasing tone. Sherry feels completely different now. The young lady, who had just been teased, was rather innocent, so she didn't understand the innuendo Erica was hinting at. As a response, she only tilted her head to the side. 13 was just as pure and confused as her, so he decided to ask Erica what she meant, which made the sorceress cough lightly because the 2 were still too clean-minded to understand what she was trying to say. In the end, she decided to change the topic and asked why Sherry felt different compared to before. Since the sorceress was someone whom he trusted, 13 told her everything, which made Erica feel a bit envious of the teenage girl who was a few years younger than her. But how did you manage to downgrade the Beast Core? Erica asked with a frown. Is that even possible? I have my ways, 13 replied in a heartbeat. Don't think too much about it. Erica knew that if Zion didn't want to tell her, it meant that he had a reason for not telling her. She was already happy enough that he had been honest about Sherry's new abilities and congratulated her for riding on the Zion bus, which gave her a smooth ride during her first wandering. After a brief chat, the 3 went to sleep. The lizard men stood vigil, while the wanderers rested for the night. The lizard men knew that when morning came, their commander, along with all 600 wanderers, would enter the portal and find the truth behind why the other lizard men had never been able to return after entering the portal that led to the unknown. In a bustling city, an extremely handsome young man with short blonde hair and gray eyes walked the streets in a leisurely manner. The ladies who saw him would call out to him and blow him kisses, which the man responded to with a smile on his face. Look, it's the heavenly sword. Kaya, he's so handsome. Is his sword really that heavenly? The most popular courtesans in the Black Rose brothel said that the young master brought them to heaven when he spent a night with them. I want to have a taste of that too. The young man, who seemed to be around 18 years old, walked around the city of Castella as if it was his own backyard. Well, technically it was indeed his own backyard because his sect, the Heavenly Pavilion, governed not only the city but also its surrounding lands. 13. What's our schedule for today? The young man asked his best friend through his thoughts. You're scheduled to have lunch with Lady Amber in 2 hours, and an afternoon tea with Lady Noelle from the Stormwind clan. I at dinner. You are to go to the Wisteria Manor to have a tryst with Lady Fischl. Her parents are currently on a business trip, so if you plan to mate with her, now would be a good time to do it. As a sigh escaped the young man's lips, he pinched the bridge of his nose. 13. How many times should I tell you not to call it mate or mating? The young man said in exasperation. Your words are too crude and rude. Hey, why should I not call it mating? Its sole purpose is for reproduction and continuing your species. Should I have just said that if you plan to have sex with her, now is a good time to do it? That's not it. You're being too literal with its meaning. I see. So you have a problem with the way I phrased it. My mistake. Then, if you plan to jam it in, now is a good time to do it because her parents are away. Since you've already done it with her maid, she might be more than happy to help you get under her young mistress' skirt. If you don't want to take responsibility, make sure to release it outside. Sometimes I wish that you were human like me. 13. The young man shook his head helplessly. Maybe if you experience what it feels like making love with someone, you'll be able to see it in a different way. Oh, Vincent, I don't see any merits to mating aside from continuing your bloodline. Also, even if I get a physical body, I will not have spermatozoon like you humans. However, lubrication using machine oil is possible, as long as I read the body temperature and stimulate the girl's *beep*. Making her reach climax is 100% guaranteed. This guy doesn't get it. Vincent's face palmed because the only one whom he deemed as his best friend was completely clueless when it came to such things. Never mind. Let's just go and have lunch with Amber as scheduled. Oh wait, Vincent. I sense Beltran's group in that alley over there, and they seem to be harassing a young lady. Vincent, who had a carefree attitude earlier, immediately became serious as he dashed toward the alley to save a damsel in distress. Halt! Vincent shouted as soon as he entered the alley and saw his fellow disciples ganging up to pin down a young lady in her late teens, about to remove her clothes. Beltran, you animal! How dare you give our sect a bad name? Vincent, what are you doing here? Beltran, who was stopped in the middle of his fun, frowned. Playing the hero again? Why must you pay attention to the lives of these lowly mortals? Isn't their main purpose to serve cultivators like us? She should be honored that someone of my status took fancy of her. Get away from her, scum. Vincent stated, as long as you do, I can still turn a blind eye to your actions. Beltran's face became flushed out of anger. This wasn't the first time that Vincent had stopped him from having fun. If not for the fact that the young man's grandfather was an elder of their sect, he would have already taught him a lesson. Beltran's father was one of the martial arts instructors of the sect, but since an elder's position was higher, he usually stayed out of Vincent's way. However, all the accumulated anger he had been restraining in the past finally exploded, making him momentarily forget about this fact. Today, I'll teach you manners. Beltran roared as he lunged at Vincent with the intent to cripple him. I'll make sure that you won't ever mess with me again. Beltran's lackeys exchanged glances with each other, not knowing what to do. They were just normal outer sect disciples. If they messed with Vincent, wouldn't they immediately get kicked out of the sect for harming the elder's grandson? Since they had no backers, they decided to stay put and watch the two exchange blows with each other. Beltran was one realm higher than Vincent, so he should have an advantage. However, Vincent was a martial arts genius who was known for defeating those with higher cultivation than him. After a few exchanges, the two backed away at the same time and eyed each other. Today, I will teach you how to become human, Beltran, Vincent said, making the sword in his hand glow faintly. You always made use of your father's status to do these atrocious acts to the common folk of this city. Shut up! Beltran roared in anger. I don't want to hear that from a womanizer like you. The only reason why you are able to get away with your degeneracy is because you are good-looking and your grandfather is an elder. In the end, you're also using the sex influence to have your way with the ladies. We're not that different from each other, so how dare you judge me? Vincent nodded. What you say is true. I am indeed more handsome than you, and my grandpa is loved by everyone because he is a very righteous person. If you want someone to blame, blame the fact that you're not as handsome and influential as me. Also, unlike scum like you, I never force myself on women. I respect and treat them like precious things, which is the reason why they allow me to asterisk beep asterisk their asterisk beep asterisk. By the way, my body count just reached 3 digits yesterday. Bastard, how dare you brag in front of me? I'll kill you. Beltran, who was pushed to the edge of hate and scorn, no longer planned to cripple Vincent. He now wanted to kill the bastard boy, so that he would never have to see his face ever again. Vincent didn't bat an eye and took a step forward. He then reappeared 2 meters away from Beltran, who was in the act of swinging his sword. With a voice filled with confidence, Vincent swung his blade, emitting a blinding flash. Heaven slash! The exchange between the 2 cultivators ended in a heartbeat, with both of them standing back to back with each other. A few seconds later, Beltran groaned before collapsing on the ground, facing upward. On his chest was an indentation of a sword strike that knocked out all the wind from his body, rendering him unconscious. Send this scum back to the sect, and make sure he behaves, Vincent said to Beltran's lackeys. If he causes trouble in this city again, I'll make sure to tell my father to also expel the 2 of you, while having him confined in the heat chamber for a month. We'll see if he still won't contemplate his evil deeds there. Yes, young master. The 2 lackeys hurriedly tried to support Beltran's body in order to carry him away. However, 13 said something to Vincent, which made him stop the 2 guys Beltran away. Oh, Vincent, this scum will just repeat his offenses again in the future. I think it's time for him to learn his lesson properly. You have earned 500 system points in saving that girl, so I recommend buying this chrysanthemum breaker spray. Don't worry, it doesn't kill people. But if you use it to stab at a certain location, the sensation will be enough to give them PTSD in facing you again in battle. Would you like to purchase it? Oh yes, no. Vincent laughed and didn't hesitate to choose yes. Suddenly a spear with a weird tip appeared in the young man's hand, making him blink in confusion. Is this really a spear? Vincent asked. Why does the tip look weird? Oh, it's a prototype spear of the Donga series made from elastic yet very durable material. Its original name is Dildo Breaker version 3, but the translation error caused it to be called Chrysanthemum Breaker Spear. Dildo Breaker version 3. Vincent scratched his head as he held the spear with a weird tip that looked like an adult man's phallus. So, how do I use this? All you need to do is... An evil smirk appeared on Vincent's face after hearing his best friend's instructions. He then took a fighting stance for a spear thrust and instructed the 2 lackeys, who were holding Beltran, to stay in their position. Make sure to cite the skill name out loud. It increases the power of the attack by at least 200% according to what my former host, Samantha, told me back then. All right. Vincent shouted. Take this. Chrysanthemum Breaker. With a thrust that seemed to pierce the heavens, Vincent's attack pierced through Beltran's asterisk beep asterisk, making him regain consciousness and groan in pain. The pain was overwhelming, making Beltran's body convulse uncontrollably. After that incident, the local bully of Castella City was sent by his father to a kingdom far from the territory of the Heavenly Pavilion, never to be seen or heard from again. Many years passed, and Vincent had grown up to be one of the prodigies of the Heavenly Pavilion. His title as Heavenly Sword had also spread far and wide. However, his reputation earned him the love of the ladies as much as he earned the hate of the men. Although he was now 300 years old, he still looked like someone who was in his early 20s due to him reaching the rank of a nascent soul cultivator. If I were alone, looking down from this peak would have felt lonely, Vincent said as he stood at the highest spiritual mountain in the continent. I'm glad that you have been with me all this time. 13. Vincent, if you don't hurry and leave, they will catch up to you. Even if you are the strongest under the heavens, it will be difficult to defeat the other nascent cultivators of the orthodox, unorthodox, and demon sects. The wound you received a week ago still hasn't fully recovered. It's fine. 13. Vincent smiled faintly. I will end it, hey. Why? With your skills, if you wish to hide or run away from them, you can easily do so. I don't understand why you plan to stay and face them. 13. What is the Tao of cultivation that I practice? The Tao of love. That's right, Vincent chuckled. I, who was born not out of love but from a mistake made by my parents, practiced a Tao looked down upon by many. Isn't it funny? Those who laughed at you are now buried 6 feet under. I don't think they have the right to look down on your path. Although 13's voice sounded robotic, there was a hint of pride and arrogance in it because he had watched Vincent's journey from the day. The journey of a weak and sickly boy who was abandoned by his parents as they ascended to a higher world together. The only one who took care of him and loved him was his grandfather, who made Vincent feel how it was to be genuinely loved by someone. In order to further understand this law, he decided to pursue the Tao of love for the past hundreds of years of his life. His life was filled with meetings and farewells. He had held countless beauties in his arms, and they, in turn, held him in their embrace. As someone who lived and loved freely, these memorable nights allowed him to soar to greater heights. Ironically, it was for this reason that others wanted his downfall. He became a wanted man by the families of the ladies whom he loved. In their eyes, he was unfit and had destroyed the future of the ladies whom he had embraced. One thing led to another, and before Vincent knew it, the entire world had become his enemy. But all he wanted was to love, to build a family of his own, to have children of his own. But fate didn't wish for that to happen. His seed wasn't capable of bearing fruit as if he had been cursed. As to this, Vincent could only smile wryly. He had been running all his life, and right now, he decided that he no longer wished to run. Spreading his arms, as if to embrace the entire world, Vincent closed his eyes in bliss. Vincent. 13. Thank you for being my friend. But I think you're getting the wrong idea. I don't plan on dying. I will end it here and make everyone understand that no one can get in the way of my love. As if waiting for that moment, hundreds of cultivators landed all around the peak of the mountain and surrounded him. Give it up, Vincent, an old man wearing white robes said. Surrender yourself, and I will grant you a swift and painless death. You're getting old, Lord Yasha, Vincent said without bothering to turn his head to look at the old man behind him and continue to look at the edge of the horizon. I will make sure that I give you a swift and painless death. How dare you? Lord Yasha drew his blade in anger. Last chance, Vincent. This is the only way for you to leave this world with an intact body. Vincent didn't reply and simply smiled while looking in front of him. Light faintly illuminated the world, and soon, the sun would rise from the horizon and greet the world with another beautiful day. To ensure that he would be able to see that day, Vincent slowly unsheathed his blade, making all the nascent soul cultivators and their elite subordinates wear grim looks on their faces. Vincent, who practiced the Tao of love, also went by another name, Heavenly Sword. This name wasn't a fake title, for his sword was said to be able to split the heavens themselves. That was how he managed to ascend to the nascent soul core faster than any cultivator in the world. I will send all of you to the other side of the world with love, Vincent said as he turned around to face Lord Yasha, the temporary leader of the alliance responsible for hunting down the strongest cultivator in their world. Come, Vincent said. Let's dance. A few seconds later, the sound of swords clashing against each other reverberated at the highest mountain in the world. Those who were looking at it from a distance thought that lightning was dancing on the top of the mountain, when in reality, they were merely sword lights that flashed with deadly intensity. Ah, how can this be? Lord Yasha groaned as he tried to support his body with his sword after getting stabbed in the chest. Damn it! The bodies of his disciples, as well as his allies, who had died, lay all around him. However, there were still hundreds of cultivators actively fighting against Vincent. His white clothes were now dyed red with his blood, as well as the blood of those who had come to kill him. While Lord Yasha was still certain that they would be able to kill the Heavenly Sword, he understood that it would be a Pyrrhic victory. Was it worth it? No, this victory wasn't worth it. But they had no choice but to do it because someone wished him dead. A being who had come from the heavens beyond the heavens had asked all the powerful clans and sects in the world to kill him, or else they would be the ones who would be destroyed. Just as he was thinking about these thoughts, an annoyed voice spread in the surroundings. Stupid insects! You can't even kill a single man. Suddenly, a powerful pressure descended upon the mountain, making the cultivators who were fighting against Vincent drop to the ground, unmoving. Vincent, on the other hand, was forced to support his body with his sword, preventing himself from kneeling on the ground. He knew then and there that the owner of the voice was a being who wasn't supposed to be in this world. Someone who should have been in a higher realm of existence, above the world that they currently live in. It was none other than a void cultivator, someone who was 2 ranks above the nascent soul. Mortal, I don't want to dirty my hands by personally killing you. So why don't you kill yourself? A man wearing black robes said with a smile. He was holding an old man on his right hand and a young lady on his left. From the looks of the injuries that could be seen on their bodies, the 2 figures had been severely tortured. An angry roar escaped Vincent's lips because the old man at the black-robed man's hand was none other than his grandfather. The young lady, on the other hand, was a lady he had met 5 years ago, who saved him from the serious injuries he received after escaping from his pursuers. Both of them fell in love, but because he was being pursued, he had no choice but to leave her behind for her own safety. I won't say it again, mortal, the void cultivator said icily. Kill yourself, and I will allow these 2 to live. Don't, Vincent. Just run. 13 shouted in desperation within Vincent's sea of consciousness. Your grandfather will only live for a few months, and Lumen is just a mortal. Both of them would not wish for you to die in their place. Run away, become strong and avenge them. Vincent didn't reply to his best friend's words as he slowly raised his body using everything he had. You're right, 13, Vincent replied. But I can't do it. My heart doesn't want to do it. Fool, just give up. Come back when you manage to break through to the void cultivation rank. Kill him and his entire sect if you have to. You can't fall here. I won't fall here, 13, Vincent said softly as he raised his sword above the heavens. But if I do, please forgive me, okay? The void cultivator frowned as he listened to the target that had been assigned to him to kill talk by himself. Have you gone crazy? The black-robed man snorted. Do you really not care about these 2 people? I thought you were practicing that stupid Tao called love. It's not stupid, Vincent replied in a heartbeat. Love may be stupid, but it's not stupid. Stop talking nonsense, boy, and just kill yourself before I kill these 2 people. You won't be able to kill them even if you try. What? Are you mocking me? The void cultivator tightened his grip on the old man's and young lady's necks with the intention of making them scream so that his prey would become flustered. However, he noticed something unexpected. No matter how hard he tightened his grip, the 2 people that he was holding didn't seem to be affected at all by his strength. Wait, impossible. The void cultivator, who suddenly realized what was happening, couldn't help but widen his eyes in surprise. His grip was indeed strong, which could easily crush boulders. But something was preventing him from hurting the 2 people in his hands. It was a law. No, it was the world. No, it was the heavens themselves who were preventing him from killing the 2 people whom he could easily kill with a poke of his finger. Impossible. The void cultivator shifted his attention to the young man, whose entire body was standing as straight as a sword. One with the world, one with the heavens. How can an insignificant nascent cultivator achieve such a state? The cultivator hastily threw the 2 people in his hands and took out his weapon, channeling his strongest attack. Vincent, whose eyes glowed golden, pointed his sword toward the void cultivator. Let my last stand be so bright that I will be known throughout eternity. Vincent shouted with arrogance, making his void spread out across the entire world, reaching every living thing, whether they be beast, human, or other races. He knew that an ordinary attack would not be enough to kill the void cultivator who was 2 ranks higher than him. There was only one way to do it, and that was to burn his life force and stake everything into one last sword strike. Annihilate. Vincent swung his sword for an upward strike. Ultima break. Void cutter, the robed man roared as he swung downward. 2 flashes of light collided with each other, resulting in a sonic boom that sent the void cultivator flying backward for dozens of meters before coming to a complete stop. His gaze then landed on his opponent, who remained standing in place with his sword raised high, poised to strike. Slowly but surely, he noticed the golden flames that were creeping up from Vincent's feet, eating his body. "Ha!" The Void Cultivator laughed. "An insect like you thinks that you can kill me. You overstep your bounds, you ant. Although it didn't end the way I wanted, you still died in the end, you vermin." The Void Cultivator was right. Vincent burned his entire life force for that one final strike and had died after delivering the final blow. But the Void Cultivator saw something that made him stop laughing. The young man had a peaceful look on his face and was even smiling, gazing at him with eyes whose life had been snuffed out. Perhaps annoyed by his expression, the Void Cultivator decided to destroy Vincent's body, no longer planning to wait for the golden flames to extinguish it to ashes. However, the wind suddenly picked up, which made him frown. Beyond the horizon, the first rays of the sun shone upon the world, and on top of it, 100-meter-tall gigantic sword made of light materialized right before his eyes. "This," the Void Cultivator exclaimed because he knew what was happening. Heavenly retribution. But it wasn't just an ordinary heavenly retribution. It was a heavenly law retribution. When someone practiced the Tao and lived their lives following its will, even the heavens would be moved by their dedication. Simply put, because Vincent lived and practiced the Tao of love, loving everyone more than himself, he was equally loved by heaven. At that moment, something landed on the Void Cultivator's cheek, which made him subconsciously wipe it. He then looked at what had fallen onto his face and noticed that it was a drop of blood. More drops followed, and soon, a heavy downpour of blood descended from the skies. The entire heaven was crying for the loss of the one they loved. The cultivator wasn't aware that there was also someone else who was crying as he held onto Vincent's noble soul. The system of canon Fodders held his best friend's soul in his embrace, crying his heart out as the young man's body was slowly consumed by the golden flames. Before he died, Vincent said a few words to 13, making the system's non-existent heartache. "A friend for a day, a brother for a lifetime. Let's meet again if the heavens wills it." As the system of canon Fodders mourned the loss of his third host, the sword made of light in the distance moved as if to swing upward. The cultivator, who understood what was going to happen next, screamed in horror as the sword of heaven swung itself upward, obliterating not only the cultivator's body but also the ones in the upper realms responsible for the death of its beloved. On that day, somewhere in the heavens above the heavens, the realm above the world where Vincent lived, one of the top sects disappeared overnight due to the vengeance of Heaven's Blade.